Please remain standing for the prayers from Imam Cllr Islam from Uxbridge Muslim Community Centre.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. In the name of Allah, the most merciful and the most kind. All praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the worlds, the most gracious and the most merciful, the only owner of the day of judgment. You alone we worship, you alone we ask for help. Guide us to the straight path, the path of those whom you have bestowed your favor, not the path of those who received your anger, nor of those who gone astray. Now we pray, O our God, we recognize the divine authority, power, and leadership comes from you. We thank you for the London Borough of Hillingdon and grateful for all our people, for the peace, love, and blessings that you have given us in this community from over the years. Almighty God, thank you for the head of our council, Mr. Mayor Shahriar Ahmad-Wallana, leader of the council and every councillors in the chamber. O our Lord, in your mercy, bless the new mayor and the mayoress and grant them strength to represent the borough and Father for its interest, for the common good. Almighty God, we pray, grant the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding to our mayor, leaders, to discern effective and efficient ways to solutions to the challenges that face our community. We pray that your mercy will work in their favor, that will bring us a new harvest and season of prosperity to our beloved council and society. Amen.
Please be seated. Good evening. A very warm welcome to this evening's the London Borough of Hillingdon Council meeting. Also those who are watching us on YouTube. Agenda item 1 on the order paper. Apologies for absence.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everybody. I have apologies from Councillors Bennett, Burrows, Chapman, Dott, Garg, Gill, Judge, Ahmad-Wallana, and Singh.
Thank you. Agenda item 2 on the order paper, minutes. To receive the minutes of the meetings of the Council held on 23rd February and 11th May 2023. The minutes of both meetings, Council meetings, are agreed. Thank you very much. Agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? None. Thank you very much. Agenda item 4, my announcements. It has been a great honor to represent the borough from south to north as a mayor, along with both mayoresses, my wife Amtal, and my daughter Tuba, since the last council meeting. My first engagement as a mayor with my daughter Tuba, the mayoress, was opening the newly refurbished tennis courts in Chestnut Avenue, Northwood, and in Rosedale Park in Hayes. We had the pleasure of playing a game of tennis with the community members and with Councillor Higgins and Cllr Mathers. It was great fun. Our interfaith institutions in Hillingdon are playing a vital role in our community. Interfaith organizations promote understanding, harmony, and cooperation among people of different religions and beliefs. Their efforts contribute to fostering inclusivity, dialogue, and collaboration. I visited Hayes Muslim Centre and Uxbridge Muslim Community Centre. They generously presented cheques of £1,100 for the Mays charities. It was a blessed day to join the local Muslim community on Eid al-Adha at Winston Church Hall. 350 men and women, children came to do Eid prayers. During National Care Homes Week, I visited the Adolphus Care Home to celebrate its 20th anniversary. There was a Disney summer fair at the Burles Residential Care Home. What a great event for the residents and their families. Everyone was smiling. Voluntary organizations and volunteers in Hillingdon are doing remarkable work and making a significant impact in the community. I'm very grateful to the Hillingdon Chamber of Commerce, Brunel University, and Lancaster Hotel for organizing a barbecue evening and raising £750 for the Mays charities, Halo Children Foundation, and Al-Flah Institute. I recently had the honor to join a great community champion, Anne, in Ruislip, who is 99 years old and walking the equivalent of the London Marathon, 26 miles, to raise money for a great cause. One lap at a time, a total of around 105 laps. So far, she has completed 77 laps, leaving just 7 miles to go. A special well done to Anne, and a special thank you to Councillor Peter Smallwood for joining me on the day. It was great to be joined by members of the community, past mayors and mayoresses, councillors, and leaders of both sides to celebrate and support our brave men and women on the Armed Forces Day flag raising at the Civic Centre for Court. These great people safeguard the nation's security, protecting its citizens and ensuring territorial integrity and maintaining the peace. Honored to attend, along with the Lord Mayor of London, the presentation of a new squadron standard to 600 City of London Squadron Royal Auxiliary Air Force at RAF Northolt. I was honored to be invited to the Polish Airmen's Association's wreath-laying ceremony at St. Paul's Cathedral, remembering the huge sacrifice of these brave men and women. At HMS Wildfire Annual Ceremonial Division at Northwood Headquarters, it was an honor to meet His Royal Highness Prince Michael of Kent, and I also met Lady Gaga while visiting our fantastic Moorcroft School in Colman Cowley. Not the singer, don't be surprised, but one of the chickens in the school's little poultry farm. Sports clubs in Hillingdon play an important role to promote a more active and healthier lifestyle and community. It was great to visit Hayes Cricket Club in grassy meadows, Hayes. Our sports and activity team received a grant from the ECB to install a new non-turf cricket pitch, also Ickenham Youth FC tournament. Hillingdon House Farm. This was a huge event with 275 teams from all over London and the surrounding area. I had a great morning with Hillingdon slipstreamers at the Hillingdon Cycle Circuit in Hayes. Dedicated riders and committed coaches make this a great club. I was honored to present prizes to young people. They were all from High Wycombe, Harrow, Hounslow, Ealing. Hillingdon Borough is not only the biggest, the greenest, but very welcoming too. The first school visit to the Mayor's Parlour from Breakspear School, the pupils had lots of questions about the Mayor and my role. This was followed by a clock-mock debate in the council chamber. I have also been honored to welcome community leaders and local businessmen to the Mayor's Parlour. It has been an absolute pleasure for us to recognize, appreciate, and celebrate the fantastic work done by the council officers. Our volunteers and community champions play an important role in supporting and enriching our communities across the borough. There is great admiration for our councillors' selfless dedication and contributions and continuous hard work to make a difference and put residents first. I'm also grateful to the Mayor, my wife Antal, and my daughter Tuba for their continued support. Huge thank you to the mayoral team, Joe, Sue, Vicky, Chris, and Andy, and the head of Democratic Services, Lloyd White, for their professional advice and support always. Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item 5 on the order paper, report of the head of Democratic Services, Councillor Ian Edwards, the leader.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I invite Council to note the 7 urgent decisions that had to be made in the period up until this Council. They are all related to building works, predominantly to enable us to progress without delay the introduction of SEN placements. I ask that those decisions are noted. And at 5.2, I am moving the recommendation that Tony Zayman be appointed to the permanent position of Chief Executive and Head of the Paid Service. This follows a competitive selection process, cross-party appointments committee, and the decision of the Council on the 18th of November to appoint Mr. Zayman on an interim basis. It is now asked to remove that uncertainty and to provide stability moving forwards by appointing him on a permanent basis. There are no changes to the terms and conditions of appointment. I so move.
Is that seconded by Councillor Bianco?
I second and formally reserve my right.
Is item 5.1 noted? And item 5.2 agreed? Thank you very much. Order number 6, question from the members. The question number 6.1, submitted by Councillor Tuckwell to the leader of the council, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Edwards. Okay, sorry. Councillor Tuckwell. Moving on quickly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can the leader provide an update on the council's challenge to the ULEZ expansion into Hillingdon, action that members of the Labour group voted against supporting?
Thank you, Councillor Tuckwell, for your question. I'll set out, first of all, just the bare facts. Before then, addressing the substantive issues around the ULEZ challenge. I remind Council that it was in February of this year that Hillingdon, as lead claimant and acting on behalf of the boroughs of Bexley, Bromley, Harrow and Surrey County Council as well, issued an application to the High Court for judicial review of the Mayor's decision to expand ULEZ to Outer London. It was in April that the High Court granted permission for the claim to proceed, and in May, Mrs. Justice Ellen Bogan gave permission for additional grounds of challenge to be made, considering each ground to be properly arguable with realistic prospects of success. The High Court hearing was last Tuesday and Wednesday, and I have been advised, to be reported to me, that the hearing was, as one would expect of British justice, exceedingly fair, but also exceedingly challenging, and that is of both parties. The judge has reserved judgment and has expected to deliver to court the decision before court recesses for the summer on the 27th of July, but gave no undertaking to do so. The challenge was made on 3 grounds. The first ground was failure to comply with relevant statutory requirements. And it's by varying the existing scheme, it is our argument that the Mayor and Transport for London's were bypassing legal safeguards, which were designed to ensure that any new charging scheme is properly considered before coming into effect. It is noted that the original scheme covered only 8.1 square miles of central zone of London, where this expansion will now cover over 600 square miles and will include neighbourhoods and communities of an entirely different characteristic to the original scheme. The second ground was on unfair and unlawful consultation regarding the expected compliance rate in Outer London. It is our contention that residents, people, did not have a chance to make intelligent responses to the last year's 10-week consultation process because important information was so hard to find or verify. The forecast by TfL that 91% of cars in Outer London would be compliant has proved to be a gross overestimate and was based on limited data when we contend there was alternative and more accurate data available to the Mayor. The chairman of the UK Statistics Authority has said about TfL's claim of 91% compliance that, I quote, users requesting clarification were provided with additional information, but that too was not made available on an equal basis to the general public. He went on, this was inconsistent with the principles of intelligent transparency and the Code of Practice for Statistics to which the Mayor and TfL voluntarily subscribed. He concluded, this case is one of several examples raised with us in which TfL has made statements or issued press releases based on unpublished TfL data or where data quoted are not provided with sufficient context. The third ground was on the unlawfulness regarding the scrappage scheme, and this was argued on 2 points. That the Mayor of London did not actually know what was needed, and so why did he decide on £110 million? And since the legal challenge commenced, the Mayor of London has extended the scrappage scheme, evidencing the inadequacy of its original design. Second, he should have considered helping people just outside London in a buffer zone by letting them apply for money, the scrappage scheme too. Throughout this period of challenge, the media have shown great interest, both locally and nationally, and fundamentally, their questions come down to 3. Why are you launching the challenge? How do you answer parents' concerns that expansion is needed to prevent the harm of young people? And if ULEZ is not the answer in Hillingdon, what is? I'll answer each of those. Why did we launch the challenge? Well, the 5 authorities came together in representation of our residents, who overwhelmingly expressed strong opposition to the Mayor's expansion of ULEZ. Hillingdon Conservatives believe in putting residents first and will stand up for their interest, even if it means opposing regional or national decisions. ULEZ expansion is seen by residents as a tax on living in outer London, as they do not enjoy a frequent and well-connected public transport system providing a reasonable alternative to car use. I note that across London, 71% of private motor vehicle trips have been assessed that could have been made by walking, cycling or public transport. In Hillingdon, it is half that, 36%. Or put it another way, 2/3 of the day-to-day trips undertaken by residents in Hillingdon require the use of a car. And that is a TfL assessment. Our residents know that this ULEZ charge will impact most acutely our low-income and retired households and small businesses who cannot afford a new car or van, even if they were entitled to the limited scrappage scheme. Our residents and businesses are telling us that it is absolutely the wrong time to be doing this. When it was launched, it was about the cost of living. Now it is about the cost of living, interest rates and mortgages. It is about the squeezed middle who are not entitled to support from the scrappage scheme. The second point that is constantly made is that it's rushed. Wholly insufficient time for people to react. I note that the initial scheme to introduce ULEZ had 4 years from the announcement to the implementation, even though that implementation was brought forward by a year. When it was extended to the North Circular, there was more than 3 years' notice of the intention to do it. But to move it London-wide, there is 9 months. Does this have anything to do with the mayoral election next year? One wonders. It is obvious that there's insufficient time to secure compliance. And it's not surprising that even people such as the London Borough of Hounslow, my apologies, wrote to the Mayor requesting additional time to upgrade their fleet of vehicles. ULEZ will impact us all. Our partners are telling us that they are concerned about the impact on recruitment and retention. Hillingdon Hospital's Foundation Trust surveyed their staff, and 76% of respondents said that ULEZ would impact their working lives. Comments written back to the survey included, if I work a night duty, the ULEZ fee will cost me double, as I have to work into the next day. It will not be financially beneficial for me to continue to working at Hillingdon with the ULEZ on top of the parking charges. There is no way for me to travel to work on public transport based on my shift times. I am not in a position financially to change my car at present. I will need to get a train and bus to work, which will add over 3 hours to my working day. Please note that it normally takes me 15 minutes to get to work by car. I will need to take steps to change my job to work outside the zone moving forwards. Finally, I have a ULEZ non-compliant car. I will be looking for a new role in another trust due to this fact. These are from health professionals that we value and we wish to attract and retain in our borough. Heathrow Airport, they surveyed the over 31,000 staff and found that over nearly 10,000, 32% of those staff had non-compliant vehicles. They're obviously concerned about recruitment and retention. The council, 24% of employees that use their car to undertake their duties have a non-compliant vehicle and will be liable for the charge. It is no wonder in light of all of this that UK's biggest union, Unite, has called the expansion a tax on jobs. The second question, won't preventing expansion harm young people? Our residents are just as concerned about air quality as others, but ULEZ will make little material difference in outer London boroughs that enjoy relatively good air quality. There has been an established long-term improvement trend in air quality owing to new technologies an investment that is replacing the worst polluters. ULEZ forces the early scrapping of vehicles, and the expansion has the effect of bringing forward gains that would otherwise have happened regardless, but with considerable unintended consequences and hidden costs. Excuse me 1 second. Hillingdon is entirely different to inner London. 45 square miles with very substantial green cover. It's bigger than Westminster, Kensington and Chelsea, Camden, Islington, Hammersmith and Fulham, and Hackney, all combined, but with less than a quarter of their population. The Mayor has made alarmist statements about premature deaths in outer London, and these are misleading. He fails to point out that his own report, Air Quality in Hillingdon, a guide for public health professionals, dated February 2022, states that of the 33 London authorities, including the city, Hillingdon has the 4th lowest proportion of mortality attributable to exposure to particulates PM2.5. And that is with Heathrow and HS2 construction in our borough. ULEZ may be more appropriate for dense built-up areas, but not semi-rural outer London boroughs. And some even dispute the effectiveness of ULEZ. According to a study by Imperial College London researchers and published in November 2021, titled "Has the Ultra-Low Emission Zone in London Improved Air Quality?" it stated, "We observed that the ULEZ caused only small improvements in air quality in the context of a longer-term downward trend in London's air pollution levels. This study implies that ULEZ on its own is not an effective strategy in the sense that the marginal causal effects were small. And this was in the most polluted areas of London, not the so-called leafy suburbs of outer London." And let's now answer that question with regards to Hillingdon's air quality. Typically, people are concerned about 3 pollutants: nitrogen dioxide and particulate matter, both fine, it's the 2.5 microns, and the small, the 10 microns. What is not widely appreciated, and certainly isn't being published by the Mayor, is that only 25% of nitrogen oxide comes from road transport. He certainly hasn't said that of the particulate matter, his own report estimates that between 40 and 55% originates from outside London, including Saharan dust. What isn't known widely is that about 86% of particulate pollution is from non-road transport sources, with domestic combustion heating causing twice the amount of particulates than road transport. And that of that very small proportion of particulates caused by road transport, the majority, 60% of it, is not caused by petrol or diesel, it's caused by brake, tyre and road surface wear. ULEZ will have no impact on that at all. Even though we have a major international airport in our borough, our air quality is comparatively good, and in some areas it is very good. Hillingdon's latest air quality annual status report, published in May 2022, confirms at all air quality monitoring stations throughout the borough, compliance with current air quality legal limits were met. For nitrogen dioxide, the legal limit is 40. Hillingdon's was in a range between 16 and 34. For PMT, the larger of the particulates, the legal limit is again 40, and we were in the range 11 to 26. And for PM2.5, the smallest and the one of which there is greatest concern, the legal limit is 25, and we were in the range of 6 to 8. And we presently exceed the World Health Organization's target for 2030 of 10 micrograms. Where air quality is already below legal limits and moving close to, and in one case already achieving the targets for 2030, it is my contention that we must balance the marginal gains from expansion into Hillingdon with the likely harms that it will cause. And it is becoming clearer by the day that the harms will be greater than that assessed by TfL, as they have greatly underestimated the number of non-compliant vehicles and hence the number of households and businesses that will be impacted. These harms and costs are identified by TfL in their impact assessment. These are not my views, this is their views. The social harms, community severance impacts, the disproportionate impact on people with low incomes, differential impact on people who receive domiciliary care, mobile health services and or informal care in outer London, particularly disabled people, older people, pregnant and maternal women and people with underlying health conditions, resulting in poorer health outcomes. Differential impact on health, stress and anxiety and isolation for people on low incomes, older people and disabled people who do not qualify for the disabled tax class exemption, which could result in poor socio-economic and well-being outcomes. Financial impacts. Disproportionate financial impact for people on low incomes to access employment, particularly in nighttime economy. On people with restricted mobility, including pregnant and maternal women, parents with young children, and disabled people. Where employers do not reimburse care workers for upgrading their vehicle or paying the charge, this is likely to disproportionately impact on black, Asian and minority ethnic people and women serving the outer London area as a result of the additional costs associated with the proposed schemes. This has the potential to result in stress, anxiety, moderate negative. The economic impacts. Contraction of the potential labour market due to fewer commuters entering Greater London and people in the ULEZ expansion area switching jobs to more accessible locations. A loss of retail spending by those living outside Greater London who presently visit our borough. Increased costs of operating light goods vehicles for a significant proportion of tradespeople, street markets, delivery companies and similar. Again, these are TfL's own assessment of the impact, and it is beyond dispute that there are significant and uncosted harms of expansion, and our residents intuitively understand this. The last question that is put to me that we have to answer, and I have answered, is if ULEZ is not the answer, what is? And my response here is clearly, let's focus on the problem and not the potential income from residents and businesses. The Cleaner Cities campaign, an international body, published research at the end of June 2023. We are talking a few weeks ago. Illegal levels of nitrogen dioxide in 2022 were recorded at 17% of the monitoring sites in central, inner and outer London. And you can guess how many were in Hillingdon. None. And how many were in our coalition boroughs? None. And all but 2 are in the present ULEZ zone. Focus on the problem. DEFRA, the air quality expert group, said that to achieve further gains in particulate pollution, PM2.5 and PM10, in relation to road transport sources, requiring attention to reducing non-exhaust emissions, not solely a focus on lowering exhaust emissions. These are from our country's experts. I have added that if ULEZ is not the answer, what is? And I tell them what we do. We are a responsible administration focused on our problem, not inner London's. We are investing in acquiring better data, and we have expanded the number of automatic pollution sensors in the borough. We have air quality focus areas with action plans for the short, medium and long term, and we are investing £1.25 million this year. And we are presently looking at renewing our air quality action plan for 2024 for the following 5-year period. It isn't just talk and plans, we are also taking action. We level anti-idling fines. We have CCTV enforcement stopping people from parking outside schools or dropping off outside schools. We're modernising our council fleet, 300 vehicles. We have electric and vans and pool cars, and all our diesel-powered vehicles we expect to be able to replace by 2030. We have pollution screens at schools. We're expanding the off-road cycle route with more than 3 kilometres of canal path upgraded, and we have plans to complete the length of the canal in the borough. We are prioritising boiler replacements, noting that home heating is a very significant contributor to particulate pollution. And we've even attended to the very minor, like electric charging points for the ice cream van at the Lido, so they don't have to sit there with their engine idling. My conclusion has been and will be that the Mayor has been insulting to residents in his comments that have voiced their opposition to his expansion plan. And when seen in the context of the findings of the Clean Cities campaign, the problem is still in inner London. He is focused on the wallets of our residents and businesses and not the problem. I remain confident that the court will determine the expansion is unlawful. But win or lose, the fight will continue. Labour is becoming increasingly hostile to car use, which may be understandable in the urban areas, but not so in Hillingdon. I distance this administration, this council, from the decision in 2019 by the Labour-chaired Transport and Environments Committee of London Councils to halve road journeys made by petrol and diesel vehicles in the next 7 years. Whilst this authority will work with London councils towards that ambition, this administration will not be a signatory to that commitment. ULEZ expansion is a Trojan horse. It is to bring about road pricing, which would further be to the detriment of outer London in particular. TfL's budget reveals a dependency on the income from ULEZ, and it was announced in the House of Parliament this morning that the Mayor of London has tasked the Deputy Mayor for Transport to investigate the introduction of road pricing owing to the forecast of future decline in income from ULEZ. Until Hillingdon has equity with inner London for viable transport alternatives to the private car, this Conservative administration will continue to fight for residents and prevent inner London solutions being imposed in outer London boroughs. Thank you for your question.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Tuckwell, do you have a supplementary?
I do, Mr. Mayor. Does the Leader of the Council agree that the most effective way for residents to send a message to Sadiq Khan opposing expansion of ULEZ into Hillingdon is to vote for the Conservative candidate in next week's by-election?
Councillor Edwards.
You know how I would answer that question, but of course, and I say that for a very good reason, that I would remind residents that they could only trust a Conservative representative to support Theresa Villiers' bill that would amend the GLA Act to allow the Transport Secretary to overturn Sadiq Khan's decision with regards to ULEZ expansion and the introduction of low traffic zones. Only a Conservative representative will deliver that. Thank you.
Thank you. The question number 6.7, submitted by Cllr Islam to the Cabinet Member for Resident Services, Councillor Ray. Cllr Islam.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Please, can the Cabinet members explain why, as the local authority, are placed in resident in private rented property that are not fit for purpose. Thank you.
Councillor Avery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to Cllr Islam for your question. My answer will set out our processes for ensuring that private rented accommodation procured for homeless prevention placements is fit for purpose. If the member asking the question, or indeed any other member, has evidence that this is not the case, I'll be happy to investigate. The housing service restructure effective from April 2023 created a dedicated private sector lettings team to be the single point of contact for all landlords wanting to provide private rented accommodation to homeless households in Hillingdon. By having one specialist team, the service is able to work holistically with both new tenants and new landlords to ensure that properties are in good condition, the rent set is affordable, and therefore the tenancies will be successful and sustained in the medium to long term. When procuring private rented properties for homeless applicants, the housing service carries out a property inspection to all properties to ensure they're in a good condition and safe to let. This means the property is free from hazards and meets energy performance standards, and the service will not take on accommodation which is not in a reasonable state. All relevant safety certificates are checked before the tenancy commences, including gas and electrical safety. For clarity in terms of other permanent placements, council-owned properties are inspected, but not those of housing associations. There will be occasions when problems occur after the tenancy commences. Examples could include condensation marks and mould which have been painted over and begin to reappear, cupboards that break due to age, repaired flooring that becomes broken again, old boilers that break down despite having an up-to-date certificate, or condensation, and also general wear and tear. The service will work with landlords to get these issues resolved, as a successful and sustained tenancy is in everyone's interest. By way of additional background, the Council takes part in a pan-London inspection scheme on shared bed and breakfast properties that are used as temporary accommodation, that is either private managed hostels or small HMOs. It does this because it is more cost effective to work with, in fact, all boroughs bar one in London to achieve this service. Any agents wishing to use shared or studio temporary accommodation are required to register with the portal, and the property is highlighted for inspection. The service is run on our behalf, or is run on behalf of the London boroughs by Ealing. Turning to temporary accommodation, we recognise the need to inspect these properties, but given the speed with which they can require to be obtained, particularly in the current challenging climate, not all can be inspected before we first begin to use them. We have commenced a rolling programme of inspection. 140 have currently been inspected, and only 3 were found to be unsuitable. Thank you.
Councillor Avery, thank you. Cllr Islam, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Which the cabinet members apologies to the mum who was placed with her child into temporary accommodation, which needles in the gardens, drugs.
Cllr Islam, can I stop you? You cannot be talking about this particular individual. The supplementary question has to be. Can I please ask members, no cross-talk?
This is not cross-talk. I'm asking the question, the supplementary question, Mr. Mayor.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. Would the cabinet member apologize to the mum who was placed with a child into temporary accommodation, which had needles in the garden, drugs used materials in the flat, and the broken window? How is this being on top of standards? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Avery.
If the member in question would care to provide me with the details of that, I will investigate.
Thank you. Question number 6.11, submitted by Councillor Richard Mills to the Cabinet Member for Resident Services, Councillor Avery. Councillor Richard Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was concerned to read the sensationalist claims attributed to the Shadow Health Minister and the local Labour Party regarding an alleged delay to the new Hillingdon Hospital. Can the Cabinet Member assure me and the residents of Hillingdon that this project is fully funded and progressing as promised?
Councillor Avery.
Thank you, Mr Mills, and thank you, Councillor Mills, for the question. Sorry, thank you, Mr Mayor, and my apologies. It is the most appropriate time to raise this issue, and I was surprised and somewhat disappointed to see the comments attributed to ULEZ Streeting. They were at best uninformed and at worst dangerous. I would remind the Council that the new hospital programme was a Conservative government project, and we were delighted that Hillingdon Hospital was included within it. With planning being part of my portfolio, I have kept a keen eye on the progress of the hospital development plan. I was obviously delighted when Councillor Tuckwell's committee granted planning permission in January this year, and I am just as pleased with the work that the officers in the planning team have done to progress the necessary legal arrangements, and I thank them for that work. Mr Mayor, in order to further reassure Councillor Mills, I would like to draw attention to the comments sent to me by Jason Ciaz, who leads the hospital development programme on behalf of the hospital, who said, "The Secretary of State for Health and Social Care has announced in Parliament that the new hospitals programme will be backed by 20 billion of investment to 2030. His statement confirmed a continuing commitment to schemes previously announced as part of the programme, including Hillingdon. We therefore expect to deliver the new Hillingdon Hospital for our patients, staff and local people by 2030 as planned. We would like to thank patients, local people and staff and their partners for the support in getting it to this stage. Therefore, Mr Mayor, despite Mr Streeting's mental block, let me reassure all councillors that New Hillingdon Hospital has passed all the necessary parliamentary and Hillingdon Council steps, and I will be keeping a keen eye on its progress.
Councillor Avery, thank you. Councillor Richard Mills, do you have supplementary?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. We have continuously campaigned for this new hospital fit for the future and are obviously keeping a very close eye on the progress of this project. Does the Cabinet Member see any reason for any unnecessary delay in the delivery of this project?
Thank you. Councillor Avery.
Thank you, Councillor Mills, for the supplementary. Officers have been working extremely hard and very closely with the Hospital Trust legal team to complete the necessary legal agreements. In the coming weeks, the application will be referred to the Mayor of London for determination as required by law. Unfortunately, although here in Hillingdon we have acted quickly to get our part of this much-needed development over the line, there is no statutory time frame for Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, to make his decision. And given his record on ULEZ and other matters, I wouldn't like to predict how long this will take. I would therefore suggest that Mr Streeting's efforts could be better directed at lobbying City Hall to ensure that once again the Mayor doesn't allow personal politics to penalise Hillingdon residents by delaying this application. This will ensure the vital new hospital delivered by a Conservative government can be up and running as soon as possible. Thank you.
Councillor Avery, thank you. Moving on to the next question, 6.6. Question submitted by Cllr Mathers to the Cabinet Member for Finance, Councillor Goddard. Cllr Mathers.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In 2021, the administration amended but supported a Hillingdon Labour motion to strengthen Hillingdon Council's climate change commitments, which included reviewing the Council's investment strategy within the following 12 months to give consideration to climate change impacts in the Council's investment portfolio and public reporting on the level of investment in fossil fuel industries. Please can the Cabinet Member provide the Council's current level of investment in fossil fuel industry and what considerations and changes have been made to the Council's investments to reduce climate change impacts?
Thank you. Councillor Goddard.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Mathers for the question. On a normal day-to-day basis, most of the Council's investments are held in short-term cash instruments, including deposits with the UK Government, other local authorities and money market funds. The Council has a small allocation to longer-term pooled funds to ensure that it holds the minimum balance required to maintain professional status under the Markets in Financial Instruments Directive 2 otherwise known as MiFID II. As such, council investments do not represent long-term commitments, but are instead made to ensure the safekeeping and liquidity of cash to run the council. However, despite the short-term nature, the council has publicly stated in its investment strategy that it aims to be a responsible investor and will consider environmental, social and governance, that is ESG, issues when investing, but only after first ensuring that the primary objectives of security and liquidity are satisfied. The council aims to use those institutions that are signatories to the UN Principles for Responsible Investment, in other words, UNPRI, the Net Zero Asset Managers Alliance, and or the UK Stewardship Code. All banks, building societies and money market funds appearing on the council's current counterparty list are signatories to the UNPRI. In addition, all money market funds are signatories to the Net Zero Asset Managers Alliance and or UK Stewardship Code. If I may perhaps just pause there to demystify some of that jargon, what it does mean is a firm commitment from ourselves as an authority and from our advisors and fund managers to embracing ESG principles and minimising reliance on fossil fuel investments. As at the 7th of July 2023, the Council held £118 million in investments, with £85 million being held with the UK Government, £10 million with Cornwall County Council, £7.5 million in money market funds, and £0.5 million at NatWest Bank. These are all short-term liquid investments held to run the Council on a day-to-day basis. The longer-term element in pooled funds totaled £15 million. Information provided by the asset managers for the pooled funds show that there is approximately £518,000 of exposure to industries tied to fossil fuels. This equates, Mr. Mayor, to 0.4% of total council deposits, which of course is minimal. All pooled funds are signatories to the UNPRI, Net Zero Asset Managers Alliance and the UK Stewardship Code. I must emphasise, however, that this is an estimate which has been provided by the asset managers responsible for pooled funds, and that actually it is pretty difficult sometimes to isolate and identify a particular reliance on an activity such as fossil fuels. And in particular, I must also emphasise that the Council has got no direct investments in industries linked to fossil fuels. In conclusion, Councillor Mathers will recall that we have frequently discussed the question of whether divestment is the most effective way to influence ESG policy in underlying investee companies. As he knows, my own view is that a far more effective way to influence ESG policy is through engagement. And we are happy to permit this to be transacted on our behalf for such a minimal exposure by asset managers who are signed up to UNPRI, Net Zero Managers Alliance and the UK Stewardship Code. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Godard. Councillor Mathers, do you have a supplementary?
I do, Mr. Mayor. Would the Cabinet Member agree with me that there is concern that with the Council's precarious financial situation, particularly around the DSG, that there may not be opportunity to invest in things such as transition and environmental climate impact in the future?
Thank you. Councillor Godard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am certainly not aware of the precarious financial position that you allude to, and certainly it is not the business of this Council to invest funds in particular interest activities such as the ones you describe. The primary purpose of this authority is to have liquid funds available in order to acquit our responsibilities as an authority. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to next question, 6.2 on the order paper. Question submitted by Cllr Denys to the Cabinet Member for Children, Families and Education, Councillor O'Brien. Cllr Denys.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can the Cabinet Member please update the Council on the support available for children and families in Hillingdon in response to cost of living pressures?
Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Denys, for your question. I can tell Council this evening that Hillingdon continues to successfully work in partnership and collaborations with a range of organisations to deliver a comprehensive programme of initiatives that ensures access to service to support children and family with everyday cost of living pressures. Once again this summer, and following the successful Christmas and Easter programme, the Holiday Activities and Food Programme, the HAF, for families in receipt of benefit-related free school meals will run in Hillingdon. The national initiative, funded by the Department for Education, provides eligible children between the ages of 4 to 16 and up to 18-year-olds for those with special educational needs or disabilities with access to free holiday provision during the Easter, summer and winter school holiday periods. In 2022-2023, Hillingdon delivered 10 weeks of programming across the year over 3 term time holiday periods. The Council delivered over 35,000 sessional places to children at over 40 locations, including leisure centres, schools, children's centres, youth centres and outdoor green spaces. The programme includes sports, arts and crafts, nutritional education and personal development sessions. To date, for 2023-2024, Hillingdon will have offered up to and including this forthcoming summer programme, almost 24,000 sessional places being delivered in over 30 locations across the borough by 35 different providers and 600 at-home activity resource packs to vulnerable families. Our Family Hub and Children's Centres provide a range of activities and support to families across the borough, offering information, advice and guidance, as well as practical support in the current climate. For example, free access to child development and early years learning opportunities in our children's centres, access to family development workers who work closely supporting families, assistance with free entitlement funding and help with childcare costs through the Family Information Service. In winter 2022-2023, Cllr Manor Children's Centre opened its space for 3 months in January, February and March, alongside the Toy Library, offering access to a range of toys and games free of charge for young families during the day. As well as providing information online, Hillingdon works with and commissions services with many organisations, for example the Citizens Advice Bureau and P3, to support families, carers, young people and young carers, respectively, with debt management, household budgeting, benefits and mental health support and more. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Brien. Councillor Denys, do you have a supplementary?
No, Mr Mayor, I thought that was an excellent answer to the question.
Thank you. The next question, 6.8, question submitted by Councillor Burles to the Cabinet Member for Finance, Councillor Goddard. Councillor Burles.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Please can the Cabinet Member provide details as to whether the Council is on track to make the savings and other targets within the original Safety Valve Agreement, in which this Council was bailed out by the former Uxbridge and South Rice MP, Boris Johnson, due to the 38 million deficit that they had created. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Goddard.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Burles for the question. This authority has never received a bailout of its dedicated schools. I'm absolutely sure that Councillor Burles is encouraged by the current climate of a local electoral activity to repeat the wildly inaccurate statements that we last heard from some of his colleagues at the 2022 local elections. But I deal in facts, not in political showboating. Part 3 of the Children and Families Act 2014 imposed important but considerable obligations on local authorities to provide support for children with special educational needs. Regrettably, the provision of funding from central government has consistently failed to keep pace with the cost of these obligations and indeed the impact of inflation upon them. Hillingdon is far from alone in having entered into a safety valve agreement. Across England, the local government Chronicle estimates that dedicated schools grant deficits amount to £2.3 billion. At the time of providing this answer, 34 local authorities across England have entered into safety valve agreements, and these entail funding of £986 million. A further 55 councils with deficits are also participating in a DFE scheme known as Delivering Better Value. Furthermore, as one who was directly involved in the construction of Hillingdon's own safety valve agreement, I can provide an assurance to this chamber that Boris Johnson took no active involvement in the process. The safety valve agreement consists of a combination of repayment of costs previously incurred by this authority, by the DFE, and a number of measures which are designed to streamline our cost base moving forwards. If Councillor Burles wishes to appraise the progress being made, I suggest that he reads the most recent quarterly report, which can be found on the London Borough of Hillingdon website at www.hillingdon.gov.uk/send-school-places. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, if I may come in at that point, members be aware from Council Rule 11.5c there's a 45-minute time limit for the answering of questions. That 45-minute time limit was reached during Councillor Goddard's answer, so therefore this item is now concluded. The remaining questions will receive written answers within 5 working days and in fact will be published in the minutes. I think given that we stopped halfway through, if Councillor Burles has a supplementary, he could send that to me and we'll get a written answer for your supplementary.
Thank you, Lloyd. Moving on to agenda item 7, motions. Motion from Councillor Tuckwell. Councillor Tuckwell.
Mr. Mayor, you, along with many other residents, Hillingdon residents, will be well aware of the long and documented history of mine and Hillingdon Conservatives' objections to Sadiq Khan's closure of our main police centre here in Uxbridge. It is clear there can be no justification to close such an important community asset in the administrative centre of Hillingdon. Since 2017, this administration identified the Labour closure of our police station was a clear and pleasant danger to the safety of residents in our borough. Having brought multiple questions and motions to Council and clearly identified in budget documents, it is Hillingdon Conservatives who have taken on the fight alongside local residents against the Mayor's closure. Our campaigns were also wholeheartedly supported by North Uxbridge Residents Association, who are at the vanguard of community groups in Hillingdon, realising the depth of social impact this would have across the whole borough. I would like to take this opportunity to thank them for working with this Conservative administration to protect the safety of our residents and their property. Mr. Mayor, I am sure, like me and many other residents, you are shocked and disappointed at the abject failure of the Hillingdon Labour Group to support the residents of Hillingdon on this matter, which has been seen in the last few weeks has had particular concern to them. Noting this concern, I am appalled, and I recall the comments of the leader of the Labour group in Hillingdon, referring the fight to keep our police station as a vanity project and a waste of public money. In contrast, the neglect of Councillor Curling and his Labour group, I must applaud the true leadership shown by the leader of the council, Councillor Ian Edwards, immediately on assuming his role, carrying out the great work started by Sir Ray Puddiford. It was Councillor Edwards who used his position and London-wide influence to initiate direct conversations with the Metropolitan Police Commissioner when he took office and secured an immediate pledge to review the police estate strategy, which had previously signed the death warrant of the police station here in Uxbridge. Mr. Mayor, whether it be ULEZ expansion, Hillingdon Hospital, public transport or our police station, Hillingdon residents will be under no illusion that Sadiq Khan and Labour across London have no interest in them or their daily lives. Forced by his London paymasters to perform a screeching U-turn on Uxbridge Police Station just 2 weeks before a parliamentary by-election will fool nobody. It simply won't wash, Mr. Mayor. To treat local residents at this level, this level of disdain is nothing short of disgusting. Residents of Hillingdon know that their Conservative representatives will always be on their side, fight for what is right and will deliver. Mr Mayor, it gives me great pleasure to move this motion in my name. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tuckwell. Is that seconded by Councillor Lavery?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I second the motion. Until the recent by-election campaign revealed to the Hillingdon Labour Party and their by-election candidate how unpopular their decision to support the closure of the police station was, they had no interest in this matter. I repeat, no interest in this matter. They opposed our previous attempts to campaign to keep it open. We have always, on this side of the chamber, put our residents first and not party politics. Hillingdon Conservatives will oppose both the Labour Mayor, and we have opposed our own national government where we think it is not in our residents' interests, unlike the Labour Party, which always toes the Labour Party line. We have been campaigning and ignored by the Labour Mayor of London since 2017, but suddenly he's rethinking. Call me a cynic, but what timing? It was always a nonsense decision to close an operational police base in the Metropolitan Town Centre, and I am now glad the Hillingdon Labour Party recognised this and that they were wrong to support Mayor Khan. I urge all councillors to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lavery. Councillor Higgins.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I speak in support of this motion put forward by Councillor Tuckwell. It is a motion addressing a critical matter affecting the safety and well-being of our community, the potential closure of Uxbridge Police Station and the subsequent sale of its site. Back in November 2017, in this chamber, the Conservative councillors and council recognised the importance of retaining at the Uxbridge Police Station. They requested Mayor Khan to reconsider. However, it was disheartening to witness the Labour councillors, his puppets, who are constantly flip-flopping between two ends of the Labour Party, choosing not to support this motion, despite the significance it held for all of our constituents. Nevertheless, we persisted in an attempt to avoid closure. Yet, despite all our efforts, Mayor Khan remained steadfast in his decision to close Uxbridge Police Station. However, the recent appointment of the new Metropolitan Police Commissioner has breathed new life into our cause, and it comes as no consequence, Mr Mayor, that with the pending by-election in Uxbridge and South Ruislip, ULEZ Khan, or should I say useless Khan, and the Camden Labour candidate Danny Burles have jumped on the political bandwagon to try and hijack this campaign, repackage it in a socialist wrapping paper and try to give it back to the electorate. But residents are not fooled by desperate people doing desperate things. And I think, Danny boy, your pipes are calling you back to Camden Town. For far too long, Sadiq Khan has failed. Failed on crime in London, failed out of London, failed to listen or to engage with residents of Hillingdon in the past 6 years. That we have tirelessly campaigned on this issue is both welcoming and bewildering to witness the U-turn, driven by hopelessness and fluster as he seeks to reverse his own decision in a political gambit that does not resonate with any of our local residents. I'm confident once again this Conservative administration will take the lead in passing this motion, and as their elected representatives, it is Hillingdon Conservatives that have been standing up for them since 2017 and will continue to do so. And I have been unwavering in their commitment to their safety, security and peace of mind. I support this motion.
Councillor Higgins, thank you. Councillor Curling.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Before I read my speech, Mr Mayor, if I may use a point of personal explanation because I was quoted by Councillor Tuckwell as saying that saving the police station was a waste of money and futile. It was never, myself and the Labour group never opposed saving the police station. What we called a complete waste
Mr. Mayor,
of money.
I believe a point of personal explanation has to be relating to something that has moved in this meeting and not historic.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, that is correct. It should be about a speech you've made earlier. I was letting the member warm to his point to see whether it was going to be about something you said earlier in this meeting, but you haven't spoken in this meeting, so it has to be in the debate that we're currently...
Okay. Fair enough.
Councillor Curling, you continue.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I move the amendment on the order paper in the knowledge that the Conservatives will vote it down, but it's important to put the record straight and to try and stop the Chamber indulging in the dishonest tactics of the former MP for Uxbridge and South Ruislip. Therefore, after the misrepresentation of the Labour group's voting record in November 2017, I feel it is necessary to add the reasons why we voted as we did, which were spelt out in our amendment at the time. In 2017, the Labour group moved that we should enlist the help of the three borough MPs to lobby central government for the funding to keep the police station open. Let me cast you back to the realities of those times when the Conservative government had reduced police numbers by 20,000 and police budgets, especially for neighbourhood policing, were slashed. Have we forgotten the video clip that went viral in 2015 of Inspector Damon O'Reilly, the officer named as Britain's Community Policeman of the Year, telling Theresa May that her cuts to policing had forced him out? He told her, and I quote, "I can't take any more. Community policing has collapsed." Those Conservative government police cuts led to massive police station closure programme, with over 600 police stations closed across the country. When Boris Johnson was the mayor, he closed and sold off West Drayton police station. He also wasted copious amounts of taxpayers' money buying water cannons that were illegal to use. So we need no lectures on the Mayor of London's financial management. I suppose the water cannons could have been used to water the ill-fated Garden Bridge, another waste of taxpayers' money, courtesy of Mayor Johnson. About 6 years ago, the Hillingdon Conservative administration made a grand gesture of using council taxpayers' money to buy the police station that local taxpayers had already funded. This would have taken council tax money away from providing local services in favour of buying a building that was already in public ownership. Luckily, we now see Mayor Khan making considerable investment in London's neighbourhood policing and the new commissioner conducting a review of the police estate, all of which means that the Labour group, together with the Labour parliamentary candidate, has successfully lobbied for the police station to remain open and operational. This is in stark contrast to the 6 years of failure for the Conservatives' cynical gimmick of offering to buy the police station. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Curling. Is that seconded by Councillor Mathers?
I formally second and reserve my right, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Douglas Mills.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just confirm now that we are debating the amendment that's been moved by Councillor Curling, seconded by Councillor Mathers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, here is classic left-leaning thinking. We're in a trouble. People have actually sussed us out. What do? We try to actually change the history of events. And we try to make sure that people get so confused they actually forget what the question was at the beginning. Classical left-leaning thinking.
Well, your dead cat you've just tried to put on the table here to convert people into thinking that you're lovely people, it ain't going to bounce. And the reason why is because the truth of the matter is that we have been debating this since 2017. And let me give you a true history lesson. In 2017, just before we met as a council, the mayor decided he wanted to come and speak to residents of Hillingdon about his proposal to close the police station. But he didn't want to come himself. He sent a representative from his officer team. And in this very chamber, he invited residents' associations to discuss the issue. I was there. Indeed, members of Hillingdon Labour Group were there. And I believe, Councillor Curling, you were there. And you sat at the back and you said, not a dicky bird. You didn't speak up then in front of the residents and say, this is a bad idea. The residents made it quite clear this would be a bad idea. This would increase crime in the Uxbridge area. Shame. And guess what? The crime figures in the Uxbridge area have gone up, and the left-leaning are now saying, all those wicked Tories, they've made crime go up. It was you and you who didn't make the decision to stand with the residents in 2017.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. Point of order. The councillor should be speaking and addressing the mayor. He is accusing you of lots of nasty things. If I was you, I would not stand for it.
Councillor Curling, thank you. It's noted.
Mr. Mayor, for absolute clarity, through you, Hillingdon Labour were at that meeting and failed to represent the people of this borough. They have failed in the council chamber, they failed at the public meeting, and they have failed every time since. And now, when they have an election, they're running around with their trousers on fire in absolute panic. And they're thinking, what do we do? It's a fact, Mr. Mayor, that Count Binface has been to Uxbridge more times than the Mayor of London. That's the value of Hillingdon Labour Party, London Labour Party, put on the residents of this borough. We are not standing for it, and you may well have a big surprise coming to you.
Thank you, Councillor Douglas Mills. Just for the housekeeping, when a member is speaking, please listen. You will have your own turn. I'm not pointing to anyone. I'm just saying this to everybody. Councillor Richard Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It will come as no surprise that I will not be supporting this amendment this evening, which again shows the Hillingdon Labour Group only interested in trying to divert blame rather than looking to take the positive action like we have done for many years. For Councillor Curling to suggest that Hillingdon Conservatives has not stood up for residents on this issue is frankly embarrassing. As we have heard in the main motion, Mr. Mayor, there is a proven and recorded track record of work being done by this group to fight for our residents in our steadfast opposition to the closure of Uxbridge Police Station. And this is one of the benefits of having meetings recorded, as everyone is able to look back and see what has been previously done and said and voted on. It is not the Hillingdon Conservative councillors standing up for local residents that Councillor Curling should concern himself with, but more so his own group. We only need to recall some of their recent public failings as standing in direct contrast to the views of Hillingdon residents. Whether this be Councillor Bassett stating that ULEZ is a fantastic idea, or Councillor Nelson West supporting back Heathrow, accepting gifts from them, despite this administration's long-standing opposition to the third runway at Heathrow. They're now only supporting a candidate in a parliamentary by-election who's brought in a garden waste charge in his home borough, £75 for fortnightly collections. He has lost control. His own group have no discipline. They've even had to change their group whip after just 12 months of pure incompetence.
Councillor Richard Mills, can you please stick to the point?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Furthermore, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Curling will be aware of our ongoing opposition to Mayor Khan's closure of the police station. because as a resident of Uxbridge and South Ruislip himself, he will have received many leaflets from his local councillors over the past few years on this topic. Having been one of his elected councillors from 2010 to 2022, I know he delivered many updates through his door. Not only to his, but across Uxbridge, Useley, Hillingdon and Ruislip. Conservative councillors representing this borough have told residents that we objected to his party's closures and have taken action and made offers to his mayor to solve this.
Yes.
So for the Labour group to suggest that we have not stood up for local residents is quite simply laughable, Mr Mayor. Residents of Hillingdon, residents of Uxbridge and South Ruislip, and members of the North Uxbridge Residents Association, they know who's on their side, and they also know who is not. Those who have a history of voting against making efforts to keep our police station open, and those people are sitting on the other side of the chamber. Mr Mayor, we will be voting against this poor amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Richard Mills. Councillor Burles.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It gives me great pleasure in supporting the amendment to Councillor Tuckwell's motion. Believe me, no one was more happy than me when I heard that we had been successful in our campaign to keep the police station in Uxbridge open. This will ensure a return to some sort of normality for the residents of Uxbridge, as well as the surrounding area. I believe that the amendment relays a much truer picture of what has been happening in this saga, such as recognising the cut of 20,000 police officers from our streets pushed through by various Conservative governments, not recognising the former MP Boris Johnson's decision to close West Drayton Police Station when he was mayor, the failure of the police replacement programme, leaving 6,000 fewer police on the beat and 9,000 fewer officers in real terms, the withdrawing of the funding of the police tasking team this year from the budget, meaning that this Conservative-led council have taken 9 dedicated police officers off the streets of Hillingdon. Councillor Tuckwell's original motion fails to recognise the sterling work done by thousands of local residents who supported the campaign. In particular, the work done by the North Uxbridge Residents Association, and first the North Uxbridge Police Panel, and lately the Uxbridge Police Panel, in keeping the issue alive week after week, month after month, year after year. It makes sense that everybody gets together now and works to ensure that the Uxbridge Police Station can not only just be open, but to ensure that there is a 24-hour front desk, and that the cells can be used once again. Please support the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Burles. Councillor Sweeting.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I speak in support of the amendment, for it allows truth to shine through. I live in a ward whose police station was closed in 2013 by the then Conservative Mayor of London, Boris Johnson, whose action was supported by the current Conservative government and nodded through with very little fuss by the same Conservative administration still in office in Hillingdon, who went to the barricades over the proposed closure of Uxbridge Police Station. So where were these outraged Conservative councillors when the people of Useley and West Drayton begged for their police station to be retained? They were nowhere, as going to the barricades on this closure just didn't fit with their fixation with Boris. They didn't dare to criticise him, as they wanted him as the next Member of Parliament for Uxbridge and South Ruislip. And look where this has ended, with his name and party logo not even appearing on the tons of Tory leaflets littering the homes of local people. So the fight to save Uxbridge Police Station by using £5 million of Hillingdon Council taxpayers' money to buy it, and even more of taxpayers' money to run it, even though it was already owned by the public, was not actually about saving the police station. That was incidental, as the main point of the exercise was just to kick the Labour Mayor of London, who has been forced by the Conservative government cuts and police numbers, you've heard them, and police budgets to retrench, What hypocrisy! Police station closures were okay under Boris Johnson because he was a Tory Mayor of London, but storming the barricades was required when the Labour Mayor of London was forced to do similar. Thank goodness we have a by-election looming, so that the good people of Uxbridge and South Ruislip can have a chance of electing an MP who does not use distortions of facts in the motion to council tonight. Truth will out. I support the amendment.
Councillor Sweeting, thank you. Councillor Lavery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You'll be pleased to know I've only got some short comments for this. I'm not sure where to start with this convoluted attempt to show that Hillingdon Labour ever supported residents over Uxbridge Police Station. But I will make a slight correction to their comments regarding funding. I know capital and revenue funding gets a bit complicated, but I'll simplify it for you. We had some capital funds and we offered £5 million to buy it, to help the Mayor with his budget, which he apparently couldn't sort. But far from costing residents, we would have got a rental income from that investment. Very straightforward, and actually from a public body which is well able to pay it. So I'll put that on the record for you. But in true Mayor Khan style, this is everybody's fault but Labour's. That is normal. The Labour Party flip-flop has finally arrived in Hillingdon. I oppose the amendment.
Councillor Lavery, thank you. Councillor Cllr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm wondering if I should thank the opposite benches today for giving us all the fields of the City Hall for quite a considerable amount of time while sitting in this chamber, near teleportation that is. Or should I be upset about out-and-out electioneering? I'm sure the residents watching today at home can see through this charade and their signature misinformation. To assume otherwise would be a disrespect to them. It is our friends on the other side who insult the residents and no one else. And perhaps our colleague who seems to have visiting powers should have considered standing for the mayoral election instead. Hillingdon Labour has always stood by their residents and always will, be it police station or anything else. We do not need certification from those who have mastered the art of fabrication. I support the amendment by Councillor Curling. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mathers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I will talk direct to yourself as we should. But I will not take hypocrisy from our opposing colleagues over here when they cut this very year 9 police officers showing their true, utter feelings about their views towards policing. They don't care about policing. They may be offering capital expenditure so it can be borrowed and then paid back by, as they say, to relieve budget pressures of the Mayor. Budget pressures caused by their own Conservative government. But with this Conservative administration, the Mayor is always to blame, not the Conservative government, not their former MP, and not their own policies. It is their policies, their government's policies, and Conservative policies that have caused this problem. We need more police, and they have been provided through the Mayor. We need to have Uxbridge Police Station open, and it's been provided by the Labour campaign and the residents of Uxbridge.
Councillor Mathers, thank you. Are there any other speakers before I go to Councillor Tuckwell and Councillor Curling? No? Councillor Tuckwell, please.
Mr. Mayor, I would have thought on such an important issue as this we could have been able to come together on some sort of political consensus. However, the amendment set out before us seeks to rewrite history, is a desperate attempt for Councillor Curling to hide his embarrassment at his previous decisions and lack of courage and leadership standing up to his Labour masters abandoning Hillingdon residents. It will be no surprise for those reading this work of fiction that I nor the Conservative group will be supporting this amendment this evening. We will not rest until Uxbridge Police Station has a guarantee of long-term safety, that we will focus our attention on this fight rather than playing political games being employed by the Labour Party both locally and nationally. I've said all I need to say on this amendment, and I will leave it to my colleagues to add their own views on its shortcomings. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Curling.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, we've seen the usual bluster and bravado of the party opposite, particularly from Councillor Douglas Mills, who never fails to disappoint. But they really can't deny the reality of the situation and the history of how we got here. If they were honest, they would join us in our expression of regret that after 13 years of Conservative-led government, criminals in Uxbridge and South Ruislip are being let off whilst victims are being let down. The successive Conservative-led governments have cut a total of 20,000 police officers from our streets. That the police replacement programme still leaves 6,000 fewer police on the beat and 9,000 fewer officers in real terms compared to the last Labour government as the population has grown. The former MP for Uxbridge and South Ruislip, Boris Johnson, closing West Drayton Police Station whilst Mayor and leaving Hillingdon with only 3 police stations. Proposing to purchase Uxbridge Police Station using council taxpayers' money, money that the residents have money which council taxpayers had already paid for and residents continue to contribute towards through their council tax precept. This one they should really regret. Withdrawing funding of the police tasking team in February 2023, which provided Hillingdon residents with 9 dedicated officers to keep our streets safer. They can't blame that on Mayor Khan, that is on them. The failure of Hillingdon Conservative councillors to stand up for local residents and speak out against these Conservative-led failures in law and order. The fact that they are not just proves that they're the same old Conservatives, the same tired and discredited Conservatives that their former Mayor, MP and Prime Minister, Boris Johnson. They are a party of lies, deceit and sleaze. They have the opportunity now to show that they are different. So I urge them to vote for this amendment and prove that they put honesty, integrity and the residents above their own party politicking. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Curling. Now we move on to voting. Those in the favour of the amendment. Thank you. Those against them. Thank you. Amendment is lost.
Mr. Mayor, we now return to the debate on the original motion and to which other speakers may indicate.
Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At full council on the 2nd of November 2017, a motion was put to members to save Uxbridge Police Station, and the then Labour group voted against the substantive motion. Those members were Councillors Burles, Curling, Dott, Garg, Gardner, Lakmana, Money, Nelson, Sansapori, Singh and Sweeting. At the budget setting meeting on the 22nd of February 2018, the Labour group put forward an amendment to the budget which included to remove the priority growth for the continued operation of Uxbridge Police Station at £250,000 and to remove the £5 million provision to purchase Uxbridge Police Station. Those voting for that amendment were Councillors Burles, Curling, Dott, Garg, Money, Nelson, Sansapori, Singh and Sweeting. They also have voted against the provisions on the final budget vote that evening. On the 12th of September 2019, Uxbridge Police Station was once again raised as a motion to council. Once again, the Labour group provided an amendment but could not support the substantive motion Those who voted against Uxbridge Police Station once again on that evening were Councillors Curling, Dott, Farley, Lakmana, Mathers, Money, Nelson, Sansapori, Singh and Sweeting. Finally, on the evening of budget setting on the 25th of February 2021, the Labour Group made an amendment to the budget once again to remove the £5 million purchase of Uxbridge Police Station. Those voting for that Labour amendment were Councillors Curling, Dott, Farley, Gardner, Lakmana, Mathers, Money, Nelson, Sansapori, Singh and Sweeting. However, for whatever reason, on the same night, they decided to vote for the budget, which included their agreement of the £5 million to purchase Uxbridge Police Station. I will reiterate, all members voted for the budget on that evening, including Councillors Curling, Dott, Farley, Gardner, Lakmana, Mathers, Money, Nelson, Sansapori, Singh and Sweeting. The Labour Group, Mr Mayor, can turn, but we Hillingdon Conservatives are not for turning against Uxbridge Police Station. We support it then, we support it now, and we will continue to support it regardless of whatever the opposition bench tells us. I support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Brien. Are there any other speakers? No. Councillor Tuckwell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In summing up, it's abundantly clear once again it is Hillingdon Conservatives and this administration that are on the side of our local communities. Looking at the motion and the amendment laid out this evening, you have a clear plan from the Conservatives and a desperate attempt to change direction like rabbit caught in the headlights from a scrambling and panicked Labour opposition. Disowned publicly by former colleagues, including former Councillor Jazz Dillon, who is widely respected across this chamber, it is amazing that Councillor Curling still has the audacity to put his name to an amendment such as the one presented this evening, and I'm sure over the next couple of weeks he will undertake a period of reflection. Mr Mayor,
Councillor Tuckwell, can I please stop you? I already requested to all members that when member is speaking, please do not talk. Is that clear now? Thank you very much. Councillor Tuckwell, can you please proceed?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Residents of Hillingdon know that we have been at their side since 2017 on this issue and will continue to be so on this and any other crazy idea that comes out from the autocratic Sadiq Khan in City Hall. Through the Leader of the Council, Councillor Edwards, we will continue ongoing discussions with the Metropolitan Police to reach a satisfactory outcome to ensure that we put our residents first. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Tuckwell. Now we are voting on the original motion. Those in the favour of the motion? Thank you. Those against? Thank you very much. Motion is carried. Moving on to agenda 7.2 on the order paper, motion from Cllr Sweeting.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. All members in this chamber and our residents watching tonight want the very best for our children and young people. I hope that even in the fog of the by-election we can all at least agree to this. Hillingdon's children are our future, so are we doing enough to support schools, our head teachers, our teachers, our children? I have in my time been a Hillingdon teacher, deputy head teacher, manager in Hillingdon's education department and a Hillingdon councillor, and I know which profession is the most challenging, teaching. But COVID has delivered problems of another dimension, and our schools have been on the front line doing their absolute best in the most difficult of circumstances. So tonight's motion on standards is not, and I repeat, not, criticising the professionalism, dedication and hard work of our teachers, but it asks of us whether we could be doing better in fulfilling our statutory responsibilities of improving outcomes and narrowing the gap between our youngsters who can and our youngsters who can't. So how are we doing at raising standards? Well, the Cabinet report of the 20th of April on school standards stated that Hillingdon continues to raise standards. However, this contradicted comments from the Select Committee, which highlighted concerns about the drop in attainment levels in early years, foundation stage, Key Stage 1, 2 and 5. In order to convince listeners that all was well, the Cabinet member stated that our primary key stages performed well against national comparisons. However, the Cabinet member knows only too well that Ofsted does not recognise national comparisons, but only comparisons to similar councils, our statistical neighbours and other London boroughs. This is confirmed within Hillingdon's own school improvement strategy. So did we compare well in this COVID-affected year? We did not. If you look at the hard, cold evidence, early years below national average, Key Stage 1 reading 29th out of 32 London boroughs, and with writing at 26 out of 32, and 9th out of 11 of our statistical neighbours. Key Stage 2 reading 7 out of 11, 26 out of 32, and combined 7 out of 11 and 30th out of 32 London boroughs. Key Stage 4 maths 6% below Outer London, 9th out of 11 statistical neighbours. I could go on, but you can see it all for yourself if you dig deep into the report, where these worrying results, far more than a few dips, are glossed over by using the magic word COVID to explain the drop in performance. However, it may be a shock to all that COVID did not just hit Hillingdon, it also hit all schools nationally. So COVID should not, and I repeat, not be used as an excuse to explain poor performance compared to others. If you want to dig deeper into past council reports on standards, we can see for ourselves pre-COVID results. And the pattern is the same. In Standards Report 1920, Key Stage 1, reading we were 27 out of 32 London boroughs, writing 25th out of 32, 7 out of 11 statistical neighbours, and Key Stage 2 combined 25th out of 32 London boroughs and 8th and 9th out of 11 for combined and reading. So please don't blame COVID for our poor showing. We as a council need to acknowledge and own that we could do better in supporting our schools to raise standards and not mask worrying results in fake news. So please support the motion, which will review our approach in supporting our schools, because Hillingdon children deserve better, and Hillingdon Council's current end-of-term report is saying must do better. Please support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Sweeting. Is that seconded by Councillor Munn?
Mr. Mayor, I second the motion. My speech in support of the motion is a speech of whys, whats and wheres. Why are our results consistently towards the bottom of the 32 London boroughs before and after COVID? Why are we never in the top half when we are compared to our statistical neighbours, even before COVID? Why did the leader of the council fail to mention our schools' results in his address to the council in May? I mean, he's more than capable of delivering a speech, considering the half-an-hour response today on ULEZ and the electioneering question, clearly rattled. The election data on the other side must be shocking, and the trousers on fire might be on this side, but I think everything's on fire on the other side. Why did Cllr Sweeting have to ask that the Select Committee report on school standards include comparisons with our statistical neighbours and London boroughs? Why have we got 8 maintained schools and 8 academy schools listed as being of concern? Why did it need an Ofsted inspection of an academy school in Hillingdon to receive an inadequate rating in all areas without earlier intervention. Now I come to the whats. What are the other London boroughs with higher levels of need and deprivation doing, which have raised their results higher than our leafy outer borough? What are our statistical neighbours doing so that they are first, second, or third, and we never are? What are we doing to monitor and support schools which have many challenges, such as falling rolls and high numbers of SEND children? Now, lastly, I come to the wheres. Where is our levelling up action plan to improve performance? Difficult to deliver, I know, when the funding for the school improvement team is far less than that being spent on the ULEZ challenge. Where is our monitoring of the effect on our primaries of issues beyond their control, falling rolls, falling budgets in real term, the effect of the constant churn in pupil numbers in areas of high emergency and temporary housing? We need to dig deep to find out the reasons for our underachievement compared to our statistical neighbours and other London boroughs, and support schools whose results are being negatively affected by issues which are beyond their control. Please support the motion and let the hard work to improve our performance begin. Thank you.
Councillor Mann, thank you. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I trust Councillor Sweeting and the Labour Group take this as a friendly amendment this evening, and the additional wording that enhances and strengthens the motion by providing an accurate picture of what schools have had to deal with over the past few years. This administration is always concerned if outcomes fall within educational standards, and our school improvement team continually review and work with schools that require help to raise attainment. I should state that there are a number of strengths identified in the report from the outcomes within Key Stage 1, Key Stage 2 and Key Stage 4. However, the team have quite rightly identified areas in the report regarding early years and Key Stage 5. Performance in the early years sectors dropped in 21-22 compared to previous years. Typically, early years has been one of the strongest aspects of our data outcomes. However, the impact of COVID has disproportionately impacted children in Hillingdon and other areas. Additionally, this was the first year for reception year teachers to assess against the new early learning goals within the early years foundation stage reforms. Therefore, comparison should not be made with this data to previous years. While the data does come with a health warning in 2021-22, officers have been regularly tracking school level and local authority level outcomes by key stages and have been engaging with all schools with some of the following initiatives to improve outcomes post-COVID. This analysis has led to identifying target schools of concern for extra support with our education advisors, priorities for the next academic year in terms of area-wide issues and working in partnership with settings to support improvements, working with schools to improve their use of data and tracking to inform school improvement following COVID-19. Training and supporting schools in 2022-23 on school improvement and inspection preparation, including quality of education, behaviour and personal development within our education advisors, engaging wider mental health and wellbeing services to support our schools with young people showing mental health related issues, using the Hillingdon Learning Partnership by targeting key areas for development, and offering support for schools by expanding the use of specialist school tools to all secondary schools to assist in enabling schools to screen children and have targeted interventions to close the gaps, working more closely with SEND, health and social care teams to ensure barriers to learning are progressed and removed, setting up a 14 to 19 steering group with schools and further education colleges to explore better careers, advice and guidance for an improved post-16 pathway, signposting with our post-16 brochure looking at the low attainment in Key Stage 5 as a group to identify improvements. And I reiterate, this Council will continue to review and work closely with all additional educational settings in targeting support appropriately. I support my amended motion.
Thank you. Is that seconded by Councillor Hegger?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I formally second the amendment and reserve my right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to confirm, we are now debating the amendment.
Are there any other speakers? Councillor Kaur.
Mr. Mayor, the vision of Hillingdon's School Improvement Strategy 2022-23 is that the children of the borough should receive at least a good or better education, and it is an absolutely wonderful strategy at that. Also, the Cabinet member has very generously informed us about the many interventions and strategies the Council is already undertaking to promote high standards and of the many teams engaged in this work to help it fulfill its statutory duty. However, I believe duty is the key word here, Mr. Mayor, which is not just simply a responsibility and absolutely not a favor, even when they make it sound like one. The Annual Standards Report 2021-22 gives us the audit of the players in this endeavor. Firstly, there is the Regional Schools Commissioner, who has the responsibility for standards in academy schools. So where was this organization in highlighting concerns of an academy special school which was not deemed by Ofsted to be either outstanding, good, or in need of improvement, but inadequate in all areas and needing immediate intervention? Then we have other teams, the Education Improvement and Partnership Services Advisors, the Hillingdon officers monitoring and challenging performance, the Regional Teaching Schools Hub, and Hillingdon School-led School Strategic Partnership Board, as well as New Hillingdon Learning Partnership and West London Partnership. We also have online portals such as LEAP offering advice. However, it seems for all the hard work and effort and good intentions, Hillingdon still lags behind authorities in London, some of which have far greater challenges than us. It also lags behind many of our statistical neighbors who have a similar profile and challenges to us. And this has been the pattern for some years, so COVID is not the reason for our low standing. So instead of blaming our poor results on COVID as if it only happened in Hillingdon, we need to look afresh at what we are doing and how we are doing it, because whatever we are doing and whatever our good intentions, we are just not hacking it, and our children and young people are being let down. Thank you.
Thank you. Cllr Islam.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe the Hillingdon administration and everyone in this chamber are clearly here loud and clear. Education is the path to liberation, not just for us as an individual, but for us as a society as a whole, and greatest assets. Greatest asset to our education system is our educator. We are doing it for our next generation.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. Can I just ask, are these to the amendment or these to the actual motion? I'm confused within the previous one and now with Councillor.
Thank you. Cllr Islam may proceed. I said proceed, please.
Thank you. Any good education is the foundation on which children build their future, career, and lives. If a child is poorly fed and nurtured, it may have lifelong health issues and low life expectations. The same is true with education. Mr. Mayor, in Hillingdon, we have the good school and teaching staff, but education they are able to give to our children is sometimes less than they would wish for some number of reasons, and we should be aware of this and intervene to support when they need it. Ofsted does not recognize national comparison in looking at performance and attainment, because this is not helpful in understanding the reason for poor performance in individual.
Cllr Islam, can you please address the amendment?
Sorry?
Can you please address the amendment?
I'm not asking for amendment. I'm for the motions.
Councillor Islam, we are debating the amendment at the moment. The
sorry.
Mayor is asking you to please address the amendment in your speech.
Thank you. Councillor Hager, you reserved your right. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Sweeting.
Thank you. I know this is supposed to be a friendly amendment, but in fact I don't think the amendment will show that we are going to do enough. This Conservative administration continues to assert that all is well as our poor results are due to COVID, which fails to acknowledge that all other schools in all other areas of this land were similarly affected. We were all in the same boat. But still our results lag behind those equally affected London boroughs and statistical neighbours, even before COVID. So we need to ask why we, in this leafy green flag borough, are not doing better. Well, there are barriers which play a huge part in hindering performance, and these barriers need to be winkled out. Yes, I know there are many good officers, as the Cabinet member said, working hard, collecting data and analysing results. But all of this work is not producing the results we need. We need to think outside the box by firstly lifting the lid on what the barriers are to good performance. Teaching and learning are not delivered in isolation, as schools are a central part of their communities, and some have greater challenges than others. Assessment of these challenges and the way that they affect performance is vital. Challenges such as falling roles in primaries and huge numbers of unfilled places. This has meant that some schools having to mix ages and constantly reorganise classes in order to balance their books. Added to this, we have schools in areas of high population turnover. Schools having much higher numbers of SEND children, some 10 times higher than national average, and with more children with high needs being admitted, as these schools have unfilled places. There is a challenge of accommodating asylum-seeking children, many of whom are traumatised by their experiences. Again, this delivers turbulence. Then we have the impact of poor housing, properties not fit for purpose and not fit to learn in. The drag on learning from poor housing needs to be quantified. All aspects of the schools and their communities which have a negative impact on performance need to be explored. And in fact, Hillingdon needs to deliver its own levelling up agenda. And my motion seeks to urgently review our approach. Let it be an in-depth review, so that this Council's end-of-term report will no longer say must do better. By voting for the amendment on past experience will not deliver the results we all want. I thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. We will obviously will not be supporting this amendment, the motion in itself. The motion itself. I just want to reiterate that HMI inspectors and Ofsted have also advised that the data from 2021 to 2022 should be taken with in the context of incomplete data. As to how we deal with falling roles and how we change the birth rate, I'm not certain how we're going to do that, but we are addressing that through PAN. And as we are with regards to children with special educational needs, they are here to stay, and we have to adapt, and we are working on our children with educational healthcare plans. We're rolling out a huge programme for specialist places within special resource provisions or special school places. What I would want to say is I'm not certain that the hype that Councillor Sweeting has just ended up her statement in doesn't fall into the situation that we're talking about, a report from 2021-2022 that the Select Committee had the opportunity to look at, and officers within that Select Committee said that they would review and they are clearly reviewing it, and they will review it, and when it comes back to them next year, it can be considered again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Brien. Now we are voting on the amendment. Those who are in the favour of the amendment. Thank you. Those against? Amendment is carried.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That now becomes a substantive motion to which further amendments may be moved. If there are no further amendments, then we should vote and to approve the substantive motion.
Those in favour of the substantive? Those against? As carried. Moving on to agenda number 7.3, motion from Cllr Mathers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Picture a sunny Saturday. Picture your street, your pavement, walk onto your high street, your town centre. Picture the grass verges, the trees, the parks. Now imagine it's collection day. What do you see? For most of Hillingdon, the rubbish is everywhere on collection day, even after it's collected. It isn't a weekly event. It's a reminder of messy legacy last days. It's one of the blights of our borough. Yet our refuse collectors and street cleansing team work extremely hard and flat out in all weathers, and I'd like to take this opportunity to express our thanks for their hard work. But we have to ask, what is going wrong? What can be done to make collection days better for residents? Mr. Mayor, I move this motion to provide the Conservatives a chance to listen, a chance to respond, particularly to the concerns of residents, and a chance to take action. For Hillingdon residents and residents across the country, it is a basic expectation of councils that household waste is collected. Just to remind those opposite, it's not a popular service, but a requirement of all councils to collect household waste. This statutory service in Hillingdon, however, needs some attention to improve synchronisation. With small, effective changes, the frustrations that many of our residents currently feel about bin collection days and litter will be relieved, and it will encourage a promotion of pride that needs to be restored in our towns and communities. Over the years, I've been a councillor. Many residents have spoken to me about their concerns of different aspects of the service, many fed in through MEs and through select committees and other reviews. But the most consistent one, particularly of late, is the state of roads and pavements after collections have been taking place. Residents throughout the year, and many in recent months, have told us about the frustration of this, that things are not cleared away, that litter is everywhere. The frustration of seeing the road sweeper a couple of days later, or when they call out a request for it to be cleaned, as all the rubbish has been blown into gardens, is just putting residents at the end of their tether. And this motion calls on Cabinet to take action. But I see from a proposal in the business paper that they simply want to monitor. We expect no service to be perfect. We expect council services to be good, but not perfect. And even an imperfect action from this Conservative administration would be an improvement to their perfect inaction we often see, and especially through their mundane suggestions of more monitoring. I understand that synchronisation isn't the only factor affecting collection days at street cleansing and litter. There are the Conservative cuts to the services over recent years and their dash for digital, which has led many residents stranded. Less publicity available to talk about changes to collection days and other educational needs. This is leading to some confusion, yes, on bank holidays, but that is not the root of the problem. And let's not forget the other thing that has an impact. The Conservatives' lacklustre approach to enforcement. It often doesn't exist. And if it does, dozens of residents are ticketed for putting their rubbish in a pile to aid the refuse collectors, seen as a quick win by the administration to get those penalty notice fines. But for residents who are trying to do their bit, it's just demoralising. In contrast, If a councillor puts in a request for enforcement on a regular rubbish dumped all week long, not on collection day, maybe by a dysfunctional HMO or a high turned over rented flat, there's very little enforcement carried out, maybe a letter at best. Synchronising the services of street cleansing and of bins will help, just as enforcement would help. It might also help with challenging the pests. It might challenge the bulky items being left out. Synchronising litter picks before grass veggies are cut, shredding litter everywhere, and having our grass collected so it doesn't block our drains. This motion is not about Labour's future commitment to free weekly bins collections, which we do pledge and will deliver on. It's about responding to residents' concerns. It's not a motion about dismissing their frustrations. It's about acting to resolve their concerns. I move this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Mathers. Is that seconded by Councillor Abbey?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I second the motion. This motion addresses the recurrent issues that myself and my colleague frequently encounter. The residents in our borough consistently experience the frustration of seeing torn rubbish bags scattered on their streets. From Eastcote to Useley, we have witnessed bin day refuse not only remaining on the streets on the day, but also spreading across the neighbourhood for several days afterwards. Furthermore, residents regularly face the challenge of reporting split bags or pests attracted to them. The current online reporting system lacks a personal touch, and for us councillors, the GOS system is inadequate for this purpose. Residents feel disheartened as they, like us, frequently encounter the underlying disbelief that the council cannot effectively manage the fundamental tasks such as coordinating street cleaning operations with bin collection activities. A compilation of littered streets in Useley are U Avenue, Raisbury Drive, Winnock Road, Wimple Road, Willow Avenue, Whitehorn Avenue, Whitehorn Place, West Drayton Road, Voiler Avenue, Throut Road, The Ticket, The Coppice, Tavistock Road, Stone Close, Stockley Road, Station Approach, St. Stephen's Road, Ryland Close, Royal Lane, Rosemary Close, Roberts Close, Providence Road, Poplar Avenue, Perry Close, and many others. All these recurring frustrations and experiences are not the fault of our hard-working staff, but rather the result of a Conservative administration's incompetence. They exhibit an inability to comprehend the issues that residents face throughout the borough, provide easily accessible reporting mechanism. Moreover, they fail to ensure that the departmental or isolated thinking does not hinder the smooth function of services for our residents. Additionally, the lack of ability to allocate appropriate resources that match the needs of our borough. This Conservative administration is neglecting its responsibility to maintain our public services. Their failure can be attributed not only to the successive cuts imposed on local government by the Conservative government, but also on their own financial mismanagement. This has led to substantial debt in designated school grants and placed a significant burden on residents with an extensive repayment plan due to excessive borrowing. It's no surprise that they are rapidly selling off council land and slashing £20 million worth of services this year to balance the budget. Given these circumstances, it's understandable that the residents are deeply frustrated with them. This motion serves
Councillors, please, let's hear from the council.
Right. Finally, given the circumstances, it's understandable that residents are deeply frustrated with them. This motion serves as a necessary push to the Cabinet, urging them to improve our bin collections. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Abbey. Councillor Lavery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will propose the amendment that I have submitted. I must admit I don't recognise the borough picture painted by colleagues on the other side. I wonder where they have been. In terms of, well, obviously Camden, yes. In terms of bulky items, the bulk of items that are left out on the street and inappropriately are actually found by our street cleansing team before they're ever reported by anyone. And that's a fact. Our much-loved free weekly waste recycling services expanded over a period of 17 years to meet the needs of a growing population by adding new properties to existing routes. Enhancements in infrastructure and technology presented us an opportunity to reroute collection rounds, ensuring that all collections remain free and weekly, and that's unlike Labour boroughs. You may pledge to do it now, your colleagues don't seem to be able to manage it, and I'll include Camden in that. There's no but. Considering all collections remain free...
Councillor Avery, can you please hold on a minute? I think this is the third time I might need to seek legal advice on this. Please do not do that. Please be respectful. No, I do not allow you to speak. Please listen to each other with respect as you expect others to respect you.
Mr. Mayor, they're hoggling us.
Isn't it a very plain, simple English? Please don't do that. And don't make me ask you again the same thing. Councillor Avery, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. More than 50% of our properties saw a new collection day.
Not again, please.
With more properties having a different collection time as routes were optimised. Despite some unavoidable disruption, which was no doubt expected to widespread change, there was a successful communication campaign with improved in-cab technology to assist with dealing with miscollections. And miscollections reported to us were considerably lower within a very short space of time than they had been before the change. Following the successful rollout of the new waste and recycling collection routes in October 2022, a full review of street changing routes was completed and enhancements were implemented in May. The new and improved ways of working ensures that we visit each road on the day after rubbish is collected. Trying to do it on the same day sounds great, but you're never going to achieve the timings. This is in addition to our wider street cleansing operations. We have also committed to expanding our weekly food waste service, which acts as a deterrent to vermin and reduces the occurrence of ripped bags. Following a successful trial period of door knocking, encouraging residents to sign up for this service, we have approached 767 properties in a number of roads, most of them in the south of the borough, and we've increased participation from 19 to 56%. We have also seen from June of last year to this year a 15% increase in the volume of food waste we collect. Following the increasing of our provision of food waste to houses and a positive trial, we're now introducing food waste to all Hillingdon-owned flats.
Councillor Avery, I have to stop you. Time is up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that seconded? Councillor Denys, please.
Mr. Mayor, I second the amendment and reserve my right.
Councillor Smallwood.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for calling me to speak in favour of our Conservative amendment. And I don't know about you, Mr. Mayor, but I've been having quite a fun few weeks. And one of my highlights has been watching Hillingdon Labour transform into the Camden Chameleons. I'll explain why that's important to weekly bin collections in a moment, but first some context. As we've heard tonight, it all started at the police station, where we saw the remarkable change of the leader of the opposition and the deputy leader of the opposition.
Mr. Mayor, point of order. This is not on the subject of the amendment.
I'm just providing some context, Mr. Mayor. I mean, I know Councillor Flip and Councillor Flop won't like to hear it.
Can you please get to the point, Councillor Smallwood?
Okay. As you'll be aware, Mr. Mayor, there's been an awful lot of flip-flopping, but we won't allow it to happen on weekly bin collections. It's very clear that the Camden Chameleons seem to have weekly bin collections, fly tipping and litter in their sights. So this evening, Mr. Mayor, I come with a warning. A warning of what they are supporting with their candidate from Camden and the things that are going on in Camden. In Camden, there is 5 times as much fly tipping.
Point of order, point of order.
Point of order.
Mr. Mayor, point of order.
Can I please ask if there is any point of order? I believe that Councillor Curling stood up, and then I believe not everyone has to say that. Councillor Curling?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Point of order. I mean, we're not in Camden. I mean, I've got very little interest in what they do in Camden. I'm interested in what we do.
Councillor Curling, thank you for your point of order.
I can assure Councillor Curling I'm going to tell him exactly what we do
Councillor
in Hillingdon.
Smallwood, can you please hang on a minute? 1 second.
Of course, sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Smallwood may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If members of it were to read the amendment before the meeting, they'd read that it does relate to Camden. So, we have 5 times as much fly tipping in Camden as in Hillingdon. In Camden, they charge residents £75 to pick up garden waste, whereas here in Hillingdon, it's absolutely free. In Camden, they have fortnightly bin collections, where in Hillingdon, we are proud to have them weekly. And in Camden, they have the 3rd highest amount of fly tipping in the entire country, whereas in Hillingdon, we have the lowest in the entirety of West London. And while their candidate has been a cabinet member in Camden, fly tipping has trebled. So, Mr. Mayor, the residents of Hillingdon, and especially those in Uxbridge and South Ruislip, can stop these Camden chameleons in their tracks. Use their votes, as Conservative councillors will tonight, to protect weekly bin collections, keep green waste collections free, and never let fly tipping and litter blight our borough. Next Thursday, I urge the residents of Uxbridge and South Ruislip to put the green agenda at the heart of their votes. Recycle Sadiq Khan's candidate in Camden and send Councillor Tuckwell to the green benches.
Thank you. Councillor Farley?
Mr. Mayor, the amendment brought forward by the Conservative group is somewhat disingenuous, clearly using the council chamber for electioneering tonight. Hillingdon residents are concerned with what Hillingdon Council is doing for them. The MP, whoever they may be next week, does not set policy on bins. History tells us that this Conservative administration likes to discuss what other councils are doing as a distraction from its own failings. The administration uses this amendment to talk about the fees of other councils. What about Hillingdon Council? Fees up 30%, £75 to park your car outside your own home, increased council tax by the maximum amount, all supported by the Conservative candidate for Uxbridge and South Ruislip by-election next week. However, if this chamber is to be used for electioneering, as it seems to be the case tonight, then perhaps the residents of Uxbridge and South Ruislip should be rather more concerned by the Conservative candidate for next week's by-election issuing literature that tell out-and-out lies about what he could do if he was elected to Parliament, promising things...
Councillor Farley, it's not about by-election. Please stick to the point.
I am.
Can I ask everyone, this is a council meeting, it's recorded, yes, your own residents are watching, so please take it serious. Everybody. Please proceed.
With respect, Mr. Mayor, the by-election is mentioned in the motion amendment. Thank you. Promising things that are outside the remit of the council and of an MP. I cannot support an amendment that is blatant electioneering and makes a mockery of this council and the purpose of this chamber. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers? Councillor Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What was very clear about the beginning of this motion was the fact it just referred to the bin collections and totally ignored all the other parts of the collection service that we provide. And I don't think that was necessarily an accident. I think that is part of the difference, the clear water, blue water we have between us and the Hillingdon Labour Group in terms of our approach absolutely generally guarantees 3 weekly collection, including for the green waste, which is a vital part of the service that we offer. The fact that that's why the amendment is important here, Mr. Mayor, because it isn't just about the bin collections, it's about the complete service. And our concern and the reference to the Camden is important, because what's become clear in the last 2 or 3 weeks is that their strings are being pulled by the Camden experts, and they are starting to infiltrate into Hillingdon Labour the kind of thinking that they do in inner London. And that's quite clear in terms of their stance on ULEZ, that's quite clear on their stance across a whole range of things. And what we're concerned, and why this amendment here is about bins and green waste collection, because we don't want, and the residents of this borough have made it clear time and time again, we don't want to have inner London solutions imposed upon us here in outer London, because we are entirely different. And we understand that very well, and the vast majority of our residents understand that. There is a challenge, but not maybe as bad as it was being made out. But there is a challenge in every single refuge area where you go, that some places will have rubbish afterwards that needs collecting. And Councillor Lavery has quite clearly illustrated, as the Cabinet member responsible, that he's alive to that issue, his team are alive to that issue, and we have started to coordinate the services to make sure that happens. What is interesting, if you believe what we've heard tonight, you would see it reflected in a massive number of members' inquiries on a consistent basis coming through about this particular issue. Has there been? No. So one would like to say, Mr. Mayor, that the evidence that we actually have in the borough is that we recognise the issues and we're dealing with it. What we have heard tonight from this motion is an attempt to try and muddy the waters and try to pretend that we are failing in our basic duty, when in reality, because they lacked the words in their original motion, our amendment actually creates the proper wording that allows residents to rest assured that with a Hillingdon Conservative Council, you've always had, you continue to get, and you will get a free service.
Thank you, Councillor Mills. Councillor Mathers.
Mr. Mayor, may I make a personal clarification? When I have referred to in my speech bin collections, I'm referring to green waste, food recycling and other household and other collections of refuge. It is all in one. So apologies for using the regular phrase rather than detailing everyone throughout my speech.
Noted. Councillor Mathers.
Thank you. So this amendment undermines the desires of residents for small improvements in a regular service. This amendment monitors. It notes what has been. It does not accept standards have fallen, and it does not accept that budgets have fallen, putting extra strains on our hard-working staff. If this amendment was serious, it would be a friendly amendment, not a political amendment. And just to say, the GOS system and online reporting prevents many of us from being able to report the level of the waste problems out and about in our neighbourhoods. The digital dash, again, undermining what residents need to do in terms of communicating with the council. This amendment focuses on Camden and not Hillingdon. Are they lost? Do they desire to be central London? They've definitely lost their focus on bins and other collections, as previously mentioned, street cleaning, and lost their focus on Hillingdon residents. This amendment does not address the frustrations of residents. It is a cheap political jibe relating to the by-election, whereas the original motion listens to residents' concerns, responds to residents' concerns, acts to resolve residents' concerns, and is a friendly nudge towards improving a service on a problem experienced by many Hillingdon residents. This motion is not about dismissing residents' frustrations with our services or political games. This amendment is. So, will they reject this amendment and stick with a motion that genuinely looks to listen to residents' concerns, that genuinely looks to respond to them and act on them? I very much doubt they will. They will ignore, they will monitor, they will fail to act, and it's clear that this Hillingdon Labour Group and a future Hillingdon Council Labour administration will commit to 3 weekly bin collections, including green waste, food waste, recycling and other household waste. So, it is for Hillingdon's residents, particularly in Uxbridge and South Ruislip tonight, as I see we are all saying, to look at Labour as the future, to look at what is in the interest of Hillingdon residents, which is Labour. And please, I urge all here to oppose this crass political amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Mathers. Councillor Lavery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not quite sure where to begin. The amendment made clear the steps that the administration has taken to ensure that we monitor the burst bins issue. I've already detailed the steps that have already been taken, and the service will continue to monitor progress, and if we require to take further steps, we will. We will. So I don't need a lecture from the Labour Party on how it would be done. The motion isn't actually a political by-election motion. You put up a motion tonight on waste. We have amended it to make it more strategic and sensible, which I think is our right to do so. The service will continue to deliver for our residents a free weekly collection for all types of waste, and we will continue to monitor and improve and ensure that if there are missed collections or if there are bins spilt, that is dealt with. I would encourage all members to use the reporting system. I use it and I find it works perfectly well. I know many of my colleagues use it and find it works perfectly well for all sorts of issues. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I shall conclude my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lavery. Now we are voting on the amendment. Those in the favour of the amendment. Thank you. Those against? Thank you. Amendment is carried.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That is carried. That becomes a substantive motion to which further amendments may be made. If there are none, then we should vote to approve the substantive motion or against.
Councillor Carling.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a small amendment to make. Mr. Mayor, like all of us in this chamber, I am a resident myself, and I want my bins collected every week. I don't want any further expense or any further charges on services that I pay my council tax for. Therefore, I and the Labour Group have absolutely no problem in stating and voting to confirm that we reaffirm our commitment to free weekly bin collections, including recycling and garden waste collections. We have absolutely no problem in thanking staff, and we would even go as far as reaffirming yet again that we, Hillingdon's Labour Group, rejects the idea of charging residents for the collection of garden waste. However, as elected representatives in Hillingdon, we cannot vote on what Camden Council has or has not done, and we have absolutely no concerns regarding the Labour candidate for Uxbridge and South Ruislip by-election, especially as this is a parliamentary by-election and will therefore have no effect on Hillingdon's Council's chosen waste policy. I therefore move a further simple amendment that removes the reference to the London Borough of Camden and the Uxbridge and South Ruislip by-election, because this has no relevance to the waste policies of either political group in this chamber. We would then happily join the Conservative group with a unanimous vote in favour of reaffirming that this council, of whichever colour, will pledge on record tonight to maintain the free weekly bin collections, including recycling and garden waste. If the Conservative group vote against this further amendment, then it will be clear to residents that the Conservative group are merely playing politics with this issue. So just for clarification, the amendment that I am moving is just on the second paragraph by removing everything after Council reaffirms that it rejects the idea of charging residents for the collection of garden waste. The first and third paragraphs would then remain as is on the amended motion. So, Mr. Mayor, we will now see who the chameleons are, and we will also see who is muddying the waters. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Curling is Mr. Mayor, without any doubt.
My apologies, Mr. Mayor. I always do that. I'm really sorry.
Is that seconded? Councillor Punja.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I second the amendment and echo Councillor Curling. Hillingdon Labour will not be charging for any waste collection. We too are residents who want weekly waste collection included in our council tax. The Labour candidate for Uxbridge and South Ruislip has no bearing on Hillingdon Council policies, and the Conservatives' continuously mixing of local, mayoral and national to confuse residents is really disingenuous. I urge this chamber to support this amendment about our much valued waste collection service rather than using this chamber for electioneering and seek to improve the service so that residents aren't doing the council's work for them.
Thank you, Councillor Punja. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Lavery.
I don't think it will come as any surprise to the Labour group that we are not accepting their amendment. Our amended motion stands as printed on the order paper, and we will be voting against it.
Are there any other speakers? Councillor Curling, you have right to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This just proves that that this is just blatant electioneering. Why will the Conservative group not remove reference to something that is totally irrelevant and actually show a united front to our residents? That both sides of this chamber agree on this very issue. Both sides do. But there you go. It is a night of electioneering. We will be calling for a recorded vote on this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. We're going to move to the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A recorded vote has been called for. Thank you. Just to clarify for the clarification of everybody in the room, page 9, the amended motion set out in the middle of that page. Councillor Curling's proposal is to leave the first paragraph, to leave the first line, Council reaffirms that it rejects the idea of charging residents for the collection of garden waste, add in a full stop, delete the rest of that paragraph, and then include the third paragraph as it is. Is that correct? So I'm going to call each member's name in alphabetical order to say whether you are voting for that amendment, that further amendment as moved by Councillor Curling, against or abstaining. Councillor Abbey.
For the amendment.
Councillor Banerjee. Councillor Bassett. Councillor Batt. Councillor Bianco. Councillor Bridges. Councillor Burles. For. Councillor Rita Chamdal. Councillor Roy Chamdal. Councillor Chubadar. Councillor Cawthorne. Councillor Curling. Councillor Davies. Councillor Denys. Councillor Edwards. Councillor Farley. Councillor Gardner. Councillor Gaelic. Councillor Goddard. Councillor Gohill. Councillor Higgins. Councillor Islam.
For.
Councillor Kaur.
For.
Councillor Lakmana. Councillor Lavery. Councillor Lewis. Councillor Mand. Councillor Mathers. Councillor D. Mills. Councillor R. Mills. Councillor Money. Councillor Nelson. Councillor Nelson West. Councillor O'Brien. Councillor Palmer. Councillor Punja. Councillor Riley. Councillor Sansapuri. Councillor Smallwood. Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Sweeting. Councillor Tuckwell. Madam Deputy Mayor, sorry. Yeah, Madam Deputy. Did I call your name already? I do apologise. Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I think Councillor Hagger might have been missed out.
Oh, is that where I've mixed up? Councillor Hagger.
Against.
Thank you. I'll redo this form before the next meeting. That proposed amendment is lost by 26 votes to 18. We return to the substantive motion as agreed by the Council. If there are no other amendments to that, then we should vote to just approve or not that substantive motion.
Those in favour? Thank you. Those against?
That's carried.
That's carried.
On to 7.4. 7.4, Cllr Punja.
The next agenda item is 7.4, motion from Cllr Punja.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I propose this motion in response to the increasing number of Hillingdon residents facing deteriorating physical and mental health issues because of their housing circumstances and the inadequate levels of service and poor standards they are receiving from this Conservative-run Hillingdon Council. There is no secret that Hillingdon Council's housing is in crisis. The lack of investment into social housing and the reliance of unregulated and unlicensed private landlords has left the council short of adequate housing for the number of people on the housing register, which was 2,738 in March 2021. I wonder what it is now. I have heard lots of landlords pulling properties rented to the council due to the rising costs of mortgages directly caused by the Conservative government's mini-budget set out by Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng. And of course, the cost of buildings have increased, resulting in costing Hillingdon taxpayer more money to build new housing stock. However, whilst housing will take time to build, what can be done immediately is a review on the strategy and creating a robust action plan around improving the impact of poor housing standards, poor housing and residents' well-being. Let's look at services and standards and make them fit for purpose. According to a report by Shelter, 1 in 5 of us has experienced mental health issues because of housing problems. Compared with the general population, people with mental health conditions are 1.5 times more likely to live in rented housing, twice as likely to be unhappy with their home, 4 times as likely to say that it makes their health worse. According to Hillingdon Council's own housing strategy, in Clause 14 under Health and Housing, it clearly identifies poor quality and inadequate housing contribute significantly to health problems such as chronic diseases and injuries and can have harmful effects on childhood development. The link between housing standards and health is well established, with poor stock condition and overcrowding responsible for adverse health conditions. It's all very well writing a tick-box strategy, but what is Hillingdon Council doing about supporting our residents who are caught up in the housing failures of this Conservative-run council? Cutting costs to services leading to poorer standards is being disguised as digital efficiencies. Residents are caught up in crisis, in a computer system with no one to talk to. Residents are caught up in the poor quality of repairs with long waiting times. Residents are caught up in overcrowded conditions. Residents are stuck in temporary accommodation that does not meet their needs. Residents are being let down by landlords and are being let down by this council. Resident A, a young mum of 2, has lived in temporary studio flat for 5 years with 2 children, one of whom is autistic. Her cramped, overcrowded living space has a detrimental impact on her mental and physical health. She struggles on a daily basis managing her son, feels physically and mentally exhausted, suffers from depression and anxiety. Being continuously let down by locator, not understanding why people with priority dates behind hers are succeeding, the lack of empathy from housing services and the inability to speak to someone are exacerbating her poor mental health. What can the council do? Resident B, a mother of 4 whose youngest child needs a walking frame, is living in cramped and overcrowded conditions. The system means she can never speak to anyone and get the help that she needs. She suffers from depression, fatigue, anxiety and loneliness. What can the council do? Resident C, a foster mum whose child has asthma and now she has respiratory issues because of the dust and poor air quality due to the company occupying land behind her house, as well as a rat problem from the build-up of waste on the land. What can the council do? A few months ago, I visited a council tenant and I was too scared to climb the stairs as I could see they were crumbling with rust. What the tenant told me is that he dices with his own life every day on those stairs. What can the council do? This motion is based on real-life experiences that this council can either choose to address or turn their back on. I don't know if the council still has a mental health champion. I believe it used to be Councillor Tuckwell. Maybe he can shed light on how our residents can be supported through this Conservative-led housing crisis to care for their well-being. After all, he does chair planning. Mr Mayor, I would like to draw members of this Chamber's attention to a statement made in their own housing plan strategy. Hillingdon Council aspires to lead the way on housing standards to ensure a positive experience of our homes, our neighbourhoods and our management practices. Let's start now by supporting this motion. I move.
Thank you, Councillor Punja. Is that seconded by Councillor Gardner? Yes.
Can I stay sitting down?
Please remain seated.
Thank you. What I'm going to do is give you some reasons that residents' well-being and stress levels appear to have been overlooked by housing staff. When many residents report mould and disrepair to private landlords, many are threatened with eviction or just told it's their fault and get on with it. Some residents get no proper explanation by housing staff when they're refused by the hardship panel or why their medical condition that they consider really serious isn't considered serious enough to change their locata banding. Some residents continually being told the documents they've sent into the council haven't arrived. Some residents feel that housing staff are either ignoring them totally or very unsympathetic. Some residents get no response from housing following a great many emails asking for help, not even the courtesy of a holding reply. And that really worries me because it's common courtesy to say that you've received something. Continually, and I mean continually, we are getting residents coming to surgeries crying because they feel nobody's interested in the situation. The stress and anxiety levels of many of the residents we meet are actually at crisis point, and we worry about their mental health. As a consequence of the elevated stress levels of the parents, the family as a whole is suffering, and that includes the children. I'm sure every councillor here will be able to confirm that housing cases are increasing in seriousness and residents are getting more desperate for us as councillors to help them. What is also worth taking into consideration is when thinking about what the well-being of residents, many residents do not have English as their first language, and therefore translation of some written responses are not properly understood by the residents, causing additional stress and confusion. As many of you know, I only speak English, some say very badly. But with a little bit of patience, Councillor Curlin and I have managed to explain to residents the contents of some rather lengthy council documents that they bring to us at our ward surgeries. I'm very grateful to Councillor Lavery for his intervention on many of the cases I had, but I can only please ask that housing staff are given some training on how, when they are speaking to residents, to be mindful of what they say and the way that they say it. Unless communication with residents is done with some sincerity and compassion, it could be making the residents' stress levels worse. Staff must always remember, regarding the similarities in cases, never forget that every problem is unique to the resident reporting it, and everyone reacts differently to any given situation, and please remember that no case is ever the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Councillor Lavery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can assure councillors that we do recognise the detrimental impact that poor housing can have on residents' well-being. And individual cases can be challenging. The housing staff do their best to apply the housing stock we have and the housing we can procure on a fair and equitable basis. I accept, and I look at many of these cases, but the staff have got to apply the criteria across the board. It can't be those who shout loudest that get the next property. I wish it did work that way, but it really can't. It's not fair to those who actually do wait their turn in the queue. Our housing strategy does recognise the importance of health in terms of place shaping. We are working to improve living standards through investment in stock conditions, and I particularly make reference to fuel poverty because we have prioritised insulation, new windows, new boilers, because in addition to lowering people's bills and making houses better to live in, that they act to reduce emissions. I know there have been concerns around damp and mould, and we have just implemented
a coordinated response to record, track and ensure that these are dealt with. And I, as a Cabinet Member for Housing, together with my colleague Councillor Bianco, have taken a personal interest in the trackers to ensure that these are actually being dealt with. Enforcement work in the private sector is based on housing health and the safety rating system, which does have explicit impacts to health. Our homelessness strategy takes account of health and housing issues. It is being reviewed and an updated strategy will be produced in 2024. So I would contend that actually, far from not doing anything, we are actually doing a great deal of work to improve the current situation, and I'm not sure a further review of strategy and taking officers away from dealing with the current situation would actually yield benefits at this time, and therefore I cannot support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Avery. Councillor Curling.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This motion shouldn't be political or contentious, because I'm sure we all agree that someone's health and well-being, both physical and mental, is heavily affected by their living conditions. Our ward surgeries are dominated by desperately sad and concerning cases, so much so that I don't mind admitting I usually end up in tears at some of the cases we have to deal with. These cases are not only from a variety of private landlords, but also council-owned properties. What worries me, apart from the appalling conditions that people are forced to live in, is the way that they are treated, and they seem to be blamed for those conditions. For example, a tenant of a private landlord being told that their kitchen is full of damp and steam because, guess what? They're cooking in it. Their central heating boiler is making a noise because they're using it incorrectly. The skylight window is leaking because they're not wiping it down on a daily basis. Their carpet is worn because they're walking on it. And there's damp and mould in their bedroom because they have the audacity to breathe at night. So not only are the repairs very slow to be rectified, most of the defects are blamed on the tenant for simply just living a normal life in appalling conditions. Rather than blame the tenant, we should be demanding that the landlord, whether it's a private landlord or our own council, gets the defects rectified. If it was your home that had these issues, would you accept you couldn't cook in your own kitchen? You couldn't have a dry house unless you continually wipe away condensation from a skylight. You couldn't heat your home because you were using it incorrectly. No, you wouldn't, and nor would I. So why do we expect tenants to put up with it? All of this is no surprise to Councillor Lavery, as he has been extremely helpful when we've escalated issues to him, and I would like to thank him for his interventions in the cases that we have raised with him and his continuous help and support in this area. It is very much appreciated. I'm sure that Councillor Palmer will recall the young man that came to the International Men's Day event that we had last year, a young man who suffered tremendously because of homelessness. His story was absolutely harrowing and very moving. So, Mr. Mayor, I do hope that this motion gets unanimous support. I know that the administration have a habit of voting against things that they claim they are already doing, so I would request that even if they consider these issues are being addressed, that they have enough faith in their own work not to vote against it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Curling, thank you. Councillor Kaur.
One last time, Mr. Mayor, tonight. Let's picture this. You are a council tenant in a tower block in Hayes who has just undergone a surgery, and as you return home, it starts to rain. And what you dread every time there is a downpour is coming true. Water starts leaking through your electrics right onto you, filling your living room, which is also your bedroom. You have no bed to sleep in because yours is completely soaked. You can't even have a backup because water is still leaking. You need an extra dose of painkillers as the night ahead is painful, literally and otherwise. You thank your stars that your son's bedroom, however, is dry for now, but then you worry if you have spoken too soon. And sadly, you know that despite multiple promises over the years, nothing will be done again this time. According to the English Housing Survey, Mr. Mayor, a national survey of people's housing circumstances and condition, those living in non-decent homes have lower scores on life satisfaction than the people living in homes which meet the decent home standard. And regrettably, what I've shared is not an isolated case. There are many, many more, and we all must have come across numerous heart-wrenching stories as councillors in our own wards. Mr. Mayor, since 1st April 2022, as many as 171 individual properties in the 4 postcode areas, largely covering Wood End Ward, have had a works order raised which included the word mould. 171 may just appear to be a number, but it is also 171 and more living, breathing human beings, like one of my BAME residents whose property was damaged due to a leak and is awaiting correcting action from the repairs team for the last several weeks. She says her property is now uninhabitable due to mold and humidity. And talking of repairs, a person with disability who had his bathroom light disconnected due to a similar leak for safety purposes on the Christmas day last year only got a working bulb installed around Easter. While all these numbers and data is absolutely vital for making policy decisions, it also leads to an empathy gap. It dehumanizes those affected, taking a person away and hiding it under a number or a stats. The Cabinet must review its housing strategy. It must recognize that higher empathy policy-making practice that has the residents' well-being at its heart not only leads to better policy, but improved services, efficiency, and cost savings as well. I
Thank you,
support
Councillor.
Councillor Punja's
Councillor Bianco.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't planning to speak tonight, but I thought, in light of what's been said, I would add a little context. Councillor Labour is absolutely right when he spoke earlier that he and I work together on a lot of housing issues, particularly where rebuilding or property issues are involved, and on occasion we even discuss matters with Councillor Goddard and the leader. So you do get the full front team approach to these matters. I think it's worth bearing in mind that the council is landlord to about 10,000 properties, and that we are investing in that stock something to the order of 70 million a year in repairs and renewals and upgrades. And as Councillor Lavery mentioned, a lot of that is going into, or most of that is going into new, more efficient boilers, double glazing, insulation, and particularly clean air systems to improve those sorts of issues that have been discussed. Now, clearly it's not possible to be on top of one every time, and it is undoubtedly the case that residents beyond breathing and cooking do also cause issues. Unfortunately, there is a sort of counterbalance between installing double glazing, which makes everywhere absolutely airtight, and an increase in, or potential increase in humidity and condensation that didn't occur when the windows were ill-fitting and the wind whistled through them. We're investing in new property as we speak, and those on the other side will be well aware of our Hayes Regen initiative, where over the next few years we'll be investing in excess of 200 million. And that is the first of a number of programs that we are currently working on. And I think it's really important to know that our concentration on boilers and double glazing and insulation follows our work, our significant work on London fire safety, on fire safety following the Grenfell disaster. And we are ahead of everyone in London on that matter. The new front doors, the sprinkler systems, the work we have done outstrips everything anyone else in London has done. It is worth also bearing in mind that we deal with something like 3,000 repairs a month. which is a significant number, and one would hope will come down as our renovation works continue. So I think to criticise our strategy is unfair. We're doing a good job. Could we always do better? Of course we could. However, it's worth bearing that in mind, and on that basis, I conclude.
Thank you, Councillor Bianco. Are there any other speakers? Cllr Punja.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What I've heard this evening is that we're doing all that we can and we're putting money into building new, but this is all going to take time. What we're asking about, and what's really missed the point here, is that I talked about mental health and well-being. And mental health and well-being is not just about building new places and the retrofitting of apartments and the reparations. It's about the access that people have to talking to somebody. It's about the access and support that people have to knowing what's going on. And that is missing, and that is what I'm asking for in terms of looking at. It says it in your strategy, it says it in your housing plan strategy, that you acknowledge that, you recognise that, but actually in play, it's the one thing that seems to be missing, and so that was what I was asking for in this motion, which I feel I did spell out in my speech, and that has been totally ignored. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we move on to voting. Those in the favour? Thank you. Those against? Thank you. Motion is lost. Thank you very much. It was a first meeting, so thank you. Really appreciate it. And now I formally close the meeting.